Councillors, staff, lost the CEO, but he can't be far away. Members of the gallery, welcome everybody to the council meeting for Tuesday, the 27th of April. In opening the meeting, I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains region. We pay our respects to elders past and present. Also, we recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationships with the land, and we acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. And I read you the council pledge. We seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the peace and prosperity of our city. Please be seated. On leave, we have nil, but we do have apologies from Councillor Backer and the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Larwood, tonight. Do we have any conflicts of interest anybody wishes to declare for tonight? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I think maybe item 1011, where I mentioned in the report, which is the Community Service Awards. So I think maybe it's a perceived conflict. So I intend to stay, not debate and not vote.
Thank you for that. All good. Thank you very much. Yes, Councillor Barnett's been nominated to receive the Community Service Award.
Well, not councillor.
Congratulations.
Christina.
Yes, yes. I know. I always try and draw that distinction, and I always fail when people are talking to me at parties or whatever it might be. There's no escape from being the mayor. Confirmation of minutes. Sorry, there was no other conflicts of interest. I take it. I didn't see anyone's hand go up. Confirmation of minutes from the ordinary meeting of council for Tuesday, the 23rd of March 2021, and minutes from a special meeting of council for Tuesday, the 6th of April 2021. Councillor Barnett, you're happy to move those? Yep. Thank you. Do you wish to speak to it?
No, thanks.
Have a seconder. Councillor Nguyen, do you wish to speak to it?
No, thanks.
Any further debate? It ends debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. I can see you all tonight. They're all just in one direction. I don't have to look out of my right eye or around the corner. Very good. Next item is public question time. We've allocated a maximum period of 15 minutes for questions from the public, with a maximum of 3 minutes per person, unless an extension is granted. There's a whole pile of guidelines about how that's done, which are available on our website here tonight. Just ask if there's anybody here who wishes to ask a question during public question time. No, that being the case, we'll move on to the next item. Thank you. Which is petitions. We have item 7.1. Petition's been received regarding the Belford Apartments waste management and collection letter that was received, and with a petition. The report is there on pages 1 to 3. The recommendation on page 1. Somebody happy to move that item? Councillor Barnett, did you wish to speak to it?
No, thanks.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Groot, do you wish to speak to it?
I'm interested in the concept this petition raises, and I know we've got a deputation. I think. Oh no, it's Myrtle.
Yeah, that's different.
No, it is different. Sorry, I thought we had someone speaking about this as well. So look, I'll ask the question then, if I can, like the appropriate director through the chair. Have we done any work on options around this particular issue for apartments to have a private waste collection service?
So yeah, through you, Chair, to the director. Jenny.
Yeah, through the chair, there's various options that we can look at to address this issue. Should elected member wish to explore, we can look at a review of the rating structure, for instance. We can review the waste service collection, the services, because I think there were some workshops before. Some time ago, I was informed that what is the saturation point of the apartments? Have we come to a point to review the waste services in the discussion with this waste, to review the service level for the pickup bins? Or we can look at another option, as per Burnside's October report, is council may wish to contribute towards a part of their waste management strategy. For instance, organic waste or etc. So there are various options that require consideration.
Councillor.
I've got a couple of others, if that's all right, sorry.
Sure.
Second question is in relation to understanding the costs of waste collection for a particular building or a series of apartments in a building. Is it possible that we can calculate that, given that the waste contract goes across the entire city and there are fixed costs irrespective of how many bins we collect, how many we don't? Is it possible, I'm not asking what the answer is, but is it possible to come up with with an answer of exactly how much it costs per property to pick up the bin?
It's tricky.
It is.
Because generally the planning approvals ensure that there's not a whole pile of bins of the normal residential size. If there was, it'd be easy to calculate, but you'd have more lined up out in the street.
Mm.
But because there's not, it's probably, I'm surmising, it's not easy to calculate as a direct comparison. See, I wonder if one of your staff could perhaps guide us a bit better than I tried to.
Well, through you, Chair, I mean, I don't know whether the director can add anything to that. We can certainly try and calculate.
Right, I've been informed by planning department that it's about 20-30 developments that will have to be reliant upon the private waste collection of 660 litre or 1,100 litre bins. So that is probably what we would have about 20 to 30. So for each of the departments, but I'm not quite sure how many.
Not quite an answer to your question because we don't provide that larger bin collection service, so there is no calculation on that type of service.
It's almost, you could almost say you have to supply it to them and calculate how much it is.
Correct.
That's correct.
It's a tricky one. I just think if we got, is that 30 sites if I can through the chair?
Sounds like.
20 to 30 developments.
Right, okay, so that could be upwards of 300 units based on 10 units per site. So this is, I guess it's an emerging issue that we're going to have to deal with from a policy perspective, I would have thought. I just have one last question. It relates to planning. Does the planning approval process allow us to determine the type of waste collection that happens in those buildings? So I'm thinking, are they collecting organics and recycling and landfill? And how can we be assured that organics is going to composting and landfill is going to landfill and recycles is going to recyclable purposes? Are we able to compel that either through the planning provision or through some condition on the strata group?
So yeah,
I understand not, but we can't.
Director.
Through the chair, I was shaking my head at the CEO. The planning policy under the previous development plan or under the planning and design code doesn't differentiate in relation to the waste streams. It just talks about waste management as an overall. So it would be a stretch for the planning policy to talk about diversion or that. We do obviously have an overall waste management policy, which has come to council a couple of times, which has talked about thresholds as much as anything, but going to a point where through a land division, I can't see a legitimate mechanism to trigger a requirement for diversion to different waste streams.
Okay. Look, thank you. As I said, I think this highlights for us a policy conundrum that we should probably deal with. I might foreshadow a future motion on this to try and bring this to a conversation where we can have well, at least some discussion on it and a way forward. I'm not so much concerned about private waste collections. I'm more concerned about the inability for that to be diverted to either recyclables or to organics. And then as we get more and more of these sites in the city, we'll have more people, not unreasonably, asking us a similar question to what this petition is. So I think it's something that we're going to deal with. So I'll just foreshadow something later on.
Thank you. Councillor Rick.
Yeah, can I also ask on a different note? I think I won't repeat the points Councillor Groot's covered, which I was going to also raise. On top of that, can I just ask how we're going to communicate the outcome of this to each of the 16 tonight's meeting, to those people that have signed the petition, what we're going to be saying to them?
So yeah.
Sorry, Councillor, so there is no resolution that we're proposing?
Yeah.
So we would just simply note this and it's going to be considered for further research.
Should we go back and communicate the outcome of the minutes
Yes,
to
we do.
each of the signatories?
Yes, there's a matter of procedure. I understand we go back to the petitioner and talk about what the council meeting outcome was. But the CEO's making a very valid point that all that's been moved is so far is to receive and note the petition.
Yeah, so can I just ask on petitions policy outcomes, so is that the head petitioner only that gets communicated to, or the other signatories as well?
I'll have to check through you, Chair, to the governance office.
Thanks, Mike. Through the chair, normally just the head petitioner. However, with this particular one, when it was received, all of the other petitioners, or majority of them, were included as a CC into the incoming petition. So it would be easy enough to include them all in terms of advising of the response as well as the head petitioner.
Responding by email.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah. But often we'll have petitions that are scrawled out in a cafe somewhere, and so it's virtually impossible to get back to everybody reliably.
Yeah.
But because it's by email, I think we manage that to work. Yeah. Any further debate on this item? Just from my perspective, I think Councillor Britt raises some very valid points, as do the petitioners. This issue vexes several councils, Adelaide City Council being the lead because they have the most apartments. To my knowledge, they haven't solved it, but we could, if we wanted to, at a future time, ask the staff here to find out what they're doing in the City of Adelaide. From my time on the State Commission Assessment Panel, waste solutions were a heavily negotiated part of the approval. So you could put a lot of pressure on them as to how they were going to collect it and how much of it was diverted from landfill and the collection frequency. But you have to get into issues like the size of the truck with an apartment building, where the truck will be placed. So there's always discussion around having a mammoth big truck out the front that they wheel the steel wheeled big blue bin down the driveway out into the footpath. And so the new approvals try and make sure that doesn't happen. So generally they'll say that the truck has to back itself into the apartment complex car park and do all the collection from inside the building allotment. So those issues are dealt with as planning matters because they otherwise impinge on traffic matters. So I'm sure there's some good work been done around this. So I look forward to what the councillor may put forward to us at some later stage, and I appreciate the staff talking about the range of options that are available. But to my knowledge, no council has successfully resolved this issue today in South Australia. Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Barnett. Councillor Barnett, you moved it.
Yes, I'm just summing up.
Well, I'll get to that. Any further debate? If not, Councillor Barnett, I'd love you to sum up.
Right, thank you. Yes, it's certainly an area of some complexity, and I guess some of it goes to other cities in the world. I have looked at the actual design, how do you design in at the planning stage, how do you design in waste collection and separation. So debate and topic for a good one for another day. With some of our apartments down on our western side, we've already got some complaints from residents about the number of bins. I had remarked it's sort of like a conga line of bins that is actually could be longer than the street itself in some of our smaller length streets. So yeah, it's a complexity, and it just, I think, deserves some workshop perhaps later on. So I just commend us to do what we are able to do under our petition policy with the motion before us.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously, and the petitioner and petitioners will be notified accordingly, as we heard. That's the only petition we've received. Deputations, we have had one request tonight, which I've granted. So if I could call forward Ms. Anna Peluso, if you'd like to come forward and take either one of these seats, if you wish. Choices for you. There you go. And for the purposes of the minutes, if you could state your name and address for us.
My name is Anna Peluso and I live at 19 Myrtle Street, Prospect.
Okay, you have 5 minutes if you need it.
I have come here tonight to speak to you about the report on Myrtle Street. We are not happy with the result. First of all, the survey undertaken in February 2021 should have been taken during school holidays like December 2020, or January 2021, not when the children have gone back to school and it was the beginning of the fringe. In fact, the week the survey was done, there wasn't a lot of cars travelling or parking in Myrtle Street. You say that currently there is no speeding or traffic volume or road safety issues in Myrtle Street that warrant additional traffic management. How can you say that? Maybe no speeding, because many of the times with cars parked on both sides of Myrtle Street and cars travelling up and down Myrtle Street, you can't speed. It's no use saying statistics say the corner of Myrtle Street and Prospect Road has only had one accident. We are talking about the chaos and frustration that happens every day in Myrtle Street, with cars parked on both sides of the road and cars travelling up and down Myrtle Street, and both sides stopping in the middle of the road, waiting for either side to place themselves in a bay somewhere if they can find one. That's what we are talking about. Not only this, but parked cars have been damaged. Speak to Brian at number 4 and many others and they'll tell you their stories. Not only this, something has to be done, either one-way traffic or one-side parking, and we will continue fighting for this until something gets done. We think also that the yellow line on Moratti's side should have no parking at any time, literally. Across it, as people are still parking there to drop off deliveries or pick up items from the cafes. I have witnessed this. We requested yellow lines on either side of our driveways, but you are not in agreement with us. We have seen this at other council areas, so we are not sure why we can't have them. So you want to put hockey stick lines instead, which are not enforceable. But we need clarification where the 0.5 of a metre is going to start. How is this going to solve the issue of people parking partly into the driveways? I mean, the last couple of weeks, I don't know how many people have parked partially in our driveway. And not on our driveway, because I've spoken to residents of Myrtle Street going 19 and upwards and even down, and that's what they've been saying. They always have to come out and sit, and to get out, it's been very difficult. With regarding to the parking time limits, we need this in Myrtle Street, but not for residents or family and friends, as people are parking and going to work. Our street is not, as I previously said before, a park and ride street. Lastly, you say that 67 residents of Myrtle Street from Prospect Road to Vaughan Road were sent letter from council re feedback on the proposed changes. This letter was dated the 5th of March 2021 and residents received it on the 17th of March 2021. And the results were supposed to be in by the 19th. Not even 2 days have the results back to council. When I rang to query this, I was told that council usually allows residents another week. Well, how are the residents supposed to know that? I only knew that because I rang. So no wonder there was only 27 replies, not enough time for residents to do this. All I can say to you that no matter what residents you speak to in Myrtle Street, none are happy with the current situation. Hopefully you can help the residents of Myrtle Street with more than the white hockey sticks.
Okay, thank you. You've got a minute spare, but don't go away. We may have some questions for you. Are there any questions from elected members? Councillor Group.
Just a couple of things. I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. You're talking about when the traffic survey was done, I think it was in February, you said, and it was after school went back. Just, can you explain to me why that's important or not important?
Because during school holidays, people will come there with their children to go to the cinemas or to the cafes more than when they're going to school. Because they're going to school, there's no time for that.
Right.
So that's why I'm saying. So December and January, yes. And Saturdays and Sundays, Saturdays and Sundays could be at any time really. But some days you have nowhere to park yourself to let the other side go. So, I mean, that happened to me today, and there wasn't very many cars parked along Myrtle Street. but we still struggled to get through.
Thank you. Just a second question. We, as a council, been talking a lot about yellow lines, white lines, hockey sticks, or cross sticks, and all sorts of sticks on the road. Why? Just could you explain a little bit more about why you don't think the white hockey sticks would work as opposed to yellow lines?
Well, people that don't know that they're not enforceable, they might take notice, but people that know, they think, oh, well, I can park over the white line. So where are those sticks going to go? They're going just across the driveway, or where there's lines on, I think I sent a photo to Jacob. There's lines, well, indents on the road. So is that where the 0.5 of a metre going to start? Because if that's where it's going to start, well, that's not too bad. But if it's going to start just from, this side of the drive to that way.
Councillor, if you have a question, otherwise I'm going to seek clarity from the CEO around that item.
Oh, no, please. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
CEO, is it possible to get a brief clarification from staff about that question?
Through your chair to the acting director.
All right, through the mayor. Exaggerate it. So you've got the driveway, you've got a little curve generally at the end of the driveway.
That's right, yeah.
It's from the end of the curve. So it's half a metre from there.
Oh, really? No. If you want to do that, you should do it at least from the marking on the road, which gives us another about that much on each side.
Thank you. That was the clarification. We can't debate in this section. We can have questions, and I'll add a question from you to the staff because I wanted to know that too. Councillor, do you have any further questions? Are there any other questions from elected members? Councillor Barnett.
Yes. Do you think it would be valuable if council could have a meeting with the residents of Myrtle Street and explain? Because I'm going into a discussion, but very quickly while the mayor's not listening.
I'm listening.
But
There'll be a question there, Councillor.
Council, subsequent to your petition, I think the time is right, the council has had a subsequent workshop about all of this stuff. So there are lots of things I think that could actually, as we had explained to us, be explained to the residents. And I
So
think
would a
that
workshop help that?
Or a meeting.
Or meeting? Yes.
So that was my question. Would
Thank you,
that-
Councillor.
Yes, that would at least, people could come and have their say.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Explanation.
Yes. Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor?
No.
Any other questions from elected members? No? Councillor Griffin.
Yeah, just quick. I know when you came to the last meeting, and thank you for coming again to give your deputation. Really appreciate hearing from members of the community. And I remember asking you a question at the last one, obviously, that if residents were aware who signed the initial or filled in the survey, that residential permits won't apply for, residential permits apply to everybody, including residents and visitors. Do you think that they would alter their filling in of the survey? And you said, yeah, well, obviously the residents would want, the permits to be exempt to that. What's it feel like being on the street since that meeting? Because as you know, the permits won't exempt residents.
No. Well, they're still saying the same thing, they do want freedom that they can park in front of their place or any house as long as they want, after all, we live in the street. So we can't park our cars in front of our property or next door or whatever. That's not fair. Why should we have a two-hour limit or whatever? That should only be for the people that visit us, not for us.
Thank you. Any further questions? There being none, thank you, Mr. Pelosi, for your presentation tonight. Thank you very much for asking for it and for coming forward. I know how much that means. Thank you. Now seek leave of the meeting to pull forward that item 10.2, which deals with that matter. Seek leave of the meeting. All those in favour of pulling forward that item? Thank you. That's unanimous. It's thus pulled forward. The recommendations on page 14. If you can turn their minds to that. Is anybody prepared to move it as presented to us on page 14? Thank you, Councillor Groot. Or Councillor Barnett as ward councillor.
Yeah.
I'll
I just want to make an amendment, so.
Yeah, so did I. I'll see what yours is.
Well, I'll go on. I need to get it on the floor to do any amendments, so if somebody wish to move it to get it on the floor. Councillor Nguyen, thank you very much. Do you wish to speak to it?
The discussion on it.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Pearce, do you wish to speak to it?
No, thanks.
Okay, we'll now move to the first hand I saw up, which was Councillor Groot. Do you wish to speak to it?
No, I do. Look, this again is a little bit like a bit of a wicked problem that we dealt with earlier. Not the same issue, obviously, but a really difficult situation to try and resolve. I did want to move an amendment, and I'd seek other councillors, Councillor Barnett, if you think this is what you were doing as well, rather than trying to do two, we'll do one. And that was really just to insert number 7, which could say something along the lines of that council administration facilitate a meeting with residents of Myrtle Street. With interested elected members. So with residents of Myrtle Street and interested elected members.
And staff, you mean? So it's not just.
Yes.
Oh, yes, sorry, yes, yeah, absolutely. So that was assumed that staff would be there. No, I shouldn't assume.
I never
anything.
assumed.
No,
Never
that's
assumed.
right.
Would it be?
I'm happy with your wordsmithing of that to ensure that staff are included, but I did just naturally assume they would be.
Residents of Myrtle Street,
Staff and
interested members. See, is that enough for you to interpret? Indeed, Chair. Thank you. Chair. And in speaking to your proposed amendment, which I'm then happy to use what I normally do, which is to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me speak to the amendment first. Obviously, we've heard from the petitioner. I think that would be a really great idea for us to be able to do that. As I normally do as my my practice, I normally put a timeline on that as well, because otherwise it makes it very hard to understand what that might be. If I was to say within the next 4 weeks, Chair, CEO, would that be reasonable?
CEO?
Through you, Chair, yes.
Yes. Yep, within 4 weeks. Yep.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, thank you. So look, I would seek support for this motion. I think it makes sense. I'll speak to the other substantive parts of the report shortly, but if you want to.
Yep, I'll now test the floor. If I have the mover and seconder happy to concur, I'll then ask.
Does that allow us to ask a question?
I'll take a brief question,
Well,
Councillor.
just a brief question, because I'm going to support that. So that's a, but the other 6 points in front, that
Yes.
means if that goes part and we vote, it's going to happen anyway. Does that mean that?
No, if it is supported by the mover and seconder and by leave the meeting everybody, then yes, it becomes part of the motion. Yes.
Yeah.
And then it needs to be supported when voting on the motion.
I think what Alan's saying is, will some of the points in points 1 to 6 be defunct if you're having a meeting first? So I think that's what he was asking.
No, it's an additional item as moved by the
Yeah.
amender.
So it means it still goes ahead.
Whatever's in items 1 to 6 has not been, the amender's not seeking to change any of those. I'll just check.
No.
Yep, I'm happy to take them in parts if that'll make some people happy.
I'll be asking taking in parts.
Okay, yep,
Which would allow that.
Right.
thank you. So I now seek the mover, you happy to incorporate that change? Thank you. Seconder, happy to incorporate the change? Councillor Pitts? You happy to incorporate that change?
Yes.
Yep, I seek leave of the meeting. All those happy to incorporate the change? It's thus incorporated, no need for an amendment. Councillor Groot, do you wish to keep speaking?
Thank you, and I'll just formally ask if it can be taken in parts. That would be good. So look, I'm interested in the comment from the petitioner, from the deputy around when the survey is taken, school holidays versus non-school holidays. I think often we get criticised for doing things in school holidays rather than the opposite. So it's quite interesting to hear a different point of view on that. I don't know. I genuinely don't know whether that would make a difference to the count of cars in the street. It could be argued that during school holidays, people leave and go on holidays, particularly over Christmas. It could also be argued that people go to the theatre more during school holidays. So I'm just not sure where I sit with that. But I think that is interesting. At the risk of harping on something that I've been harping on for 4 or 5 years, this goes to my issue, my substantive issue, that we haven't got traffic management right in the city of Prospect, and we need to think differently about it. And whether that involves one-way streets, half closures, I don't know, purple cars in one day only, whatever it is, we just need to think really creatively about this, because I fear that we're going to keep getting these sort of presentations to us, legitimate presentations of people who are genuinely concerned about traffic in their street. And if we don't try and do something differently. So I look forward to that ongoing conversation around how we deal with parking and traffic movements throughout the city, how we deal with parking in residential streets, how we deal with streets that are parking rights, and what the tolerance levels are for people who do live close to what is the village heart, which is increasing in terms of its numbers. So look, it's an interesting issue. I'm keen to take it in parts because I do struggle with recommendation 3 around that yellow line marker is no longer installed. I don't think that is our policy position at this point after our conversation only a week or two ago, so I won't be supporting that particular notion. I am interested in the use of white hockey sticks though on line markings. We've not tried that and we need to try it, and so this could be a really good opportunity to do that as well. I'm just going to ask one last question because I fear that maybe the last answer was might have been wasn't overly clear in terms of understanding. If I could ask the placement of the white hockey stick line, am I correct in saying it's not on the driveway, but it is on where the curb goes into the gutter? So I'll be very clear about where I just wasn't sure that everyone was really.
I fear the acting director will need a whiteboard to
Well, I
properly
did think a whiteboard would be
explain.
useful.
My understanding is where the back of the curb is upright and then changes to a curve to go down to the actual crossover. It's from the point of the change from upright to the start of that curve. That is the point at which the 500 mil starts from. The 500 mil, of course, runs away from the driveway.
From the
Is that
upright?
right, acting director? Yeah.
Sorry if I can clarify, Mayor, that's a great explanation. From the upright or from the bottom of the curve?
From the point at which the back of the curb goes from straight up to starting to curve down into the
So just
driveway.
here,
Just there,
right?
at the point, at the top of that.
The top of it, yes. Okay. So
Yeah.
just in case that wasn't clear for anyone before, I just wanted.
Look, the reason that the acting director has stressed that is that we don't currently have it in a policy anywhere, and it's not a distance prescribed in the Australian road rules. If you look at the Australian road rules, there is no distance, and it could be interpreted that the white line should be from the very start of that curve, but it's a bit arbitrary. So what the staff are recommending is something quite precise and more generous than the Australian road rules, just to be really clear.
I think that's a very good outcome. I think it could be from where the curve is at the bottom of the curve is at the bottom of the curve. I think this is a bit more generous, and I just want to make that point. Apart from that, I will support the other recommendations, but certainly look forward to dealing with this and other traffic issues in the coming weeks and months.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, do you have a question, Councillor Pearce?
Yes, so just a quick question.
Yep.
Given in the report that the CEO's established an internal working party to look at traffic over the whole area, would it be reasonable to say that we open up to more than the residents of Melbourne Street? There's been other deputations for other streets, Rose Street, Daphne Street. Why restrict it to Melbourne Street? If we're going to have a meeting, why don't we open it up to residents of interest?
I'm going to deal with this very valid question on a technical basis, and the reason we wouldn't do that is because the Minda and now all of you have agreed that that is what will be done. If in another time and place the elected members wish to move something that incorporated everybody, then I think that could be done. But the technical answer to that question is that's what you've agreed to incorporate, unless it's further amended, I guess, which as seconder you can't do, but someone else could do.
That answers my question.
Thank you. Yeah. Councillor Barnett, I just recognise you had your hand up initially. Did you wish to speak to this matter?
So we're now speaking to the whole
Yes,
motion that includes the amendment.
correct.
Correct, thank you. Yes, I thank Councillor Grigg. That's exactly what, almost exactly what I would like to have incorporated. I think it's important to keep it just to Myrtle Street at the moment, because we're just dealing with this and there seem to be a few things there. I'm just aware that we elected members have had the information, and I think it corrected a lot of our understanding about parking and about the hockey lines and about yellow lines versus white lines and about all there have been changes since in the report from after 1999, things changed with the in South Australia with the road traffic situation. I'm just trying to find that. Yeah, that. So in 1999, the Australian road rules are adopted in South Australia, and this legislation made previous parking regulations obsolete that we were operating on. And so now we have these Australian road rules that we have to consider, not our own rules that we might have had, before, just in South Australia. So we're finding all sorts of things like, I just want the residents and to have be on the same level playing field that we elected members are now on in understanding this. And the reason why it's not just some perverse reason that we say, well, you can't have this and you can't have that. It's, and it also explaining about that people now have, I think it's 2 minutes, and they're legally under the SA government, not under our rules at council, legally allowed to park their car across the driveway. All right, a lot of people, especially people, residents around schools that we speak to, just cannot really understand that. So that was my reason about facilitating it, and this happens to be Myrtle Street, who are have come to us and wanting some explanation. And also, I have a question about the apparent very short time frame, and about when I just assume that we posted the consultation through the mayor or the CEO, and it was because they were posted that there was such a short time frame to respond.
So yeah, it would be good if you could clarify that. We had a few complaints about the delivery cycle, and it's obviously so close to here.
Thank you, Chair. To the acting director, are you aware of the timeframe?
Through the chair, we did post them in time period for people to receive them at the appropriate time. If everyone received them later, it was only a mixed bag, we're not sure. We post them within a time to ensure that people can receive them.
Could I just ask you to clarify, what do we think is a reasonable time? Like, do we assume Australia Post is next day or 7 days, or what is our assumption?
Generally, we want to be 1 week, so we do every Monday.
Okay. So yeah, my understanding is they won't guarantee anything less than 7 days now, so maybe you need to check that. Okay. But I think it took 14 or something ridiculous. So but that's, sorry, Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I mean, because quite frequently, some of us elected members, we've had this with other consultations with some other connected with traffic and things, and somebody just said, look, if it's just a street, we're quite happy to go and actually physically walk and book them in. It'd be a cost saving, and also,
Time.
Yeah, so I think that, anyway, yeah, so that was just my thoughts, that the staff, the CEO might perhaps have a, rethink about that sort of experience, that sort of thing. So, yeah, so I'm really pleased if we can get to meet with the residents. We can be on a level playing field with what we understand now and impart that to the residents. Yeah, and just about, although we actually haven't got we'll just have a workshop, so we're still waiting on the new revised policy to come out. But there have been some other good work done by some other councils that we've looked at. I think Lord Heyman and St Peters got a policy that's quite useful. So I'll stop talking now.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further debate on this item? Councillor Rip?
Just question for probably administration. Can I just seek some advice? Would it be better to wait on the outcomes of item 3 and item 3, item 4, before this meeting occurs? Because if we lock in this recommendation and we have the meeting and the residents say they think yellow marking should be on the table and they think they don't want white hockey sticks. If we've had the meeting, if we've moved this recommendation to and then we've had the meeting, is that going to cause issues?
CEO?
Through you, Chair, for the acting director.
Through the mayor, from our perspective, we're making a strong recommendation to you in regard to the treatment that we think is appropriate in the situation, the level of traffic, speed of traffic and the level of parking. It's for you to decide if that meets your needs or aspirations. But yeah, we believe the recommendation is sound in this situation.
Thanks, Councillor. It's not a precise answer to your question, but your question's a difficult one in the way you've framed it. We could wait an eternity, but we have specialists within our council who are advising us on public roads, of which we are the custodian. I guess a different way to put it is, do we always do what residents on streets want us to do with their street? And the simple answer is no.
Oh, no.
Because there are standards and there are equity issues between streets, and it's a very complex area. So I'm sorry to give you that bit of a long-winded answer, but that's essentially is why the acting director has said, yeah, we've given a recommendation based on our technical advice, but it's for us to vote it up or not.
Yeah. So we'll be taking.
I'm happy to take it in parts. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Just from the chair, these issues are always extraordinarily difficult, and I thank the petitioner the deputy for coming and talking to us about it. And they're difficult because there's always a perception about living on a street, which is when circumstances change, very difficult to change one perception when your own amenity changes. In other words, if your street suddenly becomes busier because there's a big construction project, trucks and cranes turn up, you get cranky. In this instance, because the shops that have been pretty ordinary for 70 years have suddenly come alive, and people want to go to them. The difficulty with those shops is that they were all built almost 100 years ago with no car parking, and we've got no ability to impose car parking upon them. So it's not an easy problem to solve. We could, buy land and knock over houses and build car parks, but it's millions and millions of dollars. Meanwhile, there are parks available in side streets that are perfectly lawful to park in. So this is the dilemma. We have available lawful parking. How do we, as a custodian of the streets and also the amenity of the area, work out that careful balance between availability and a perceived lack of amenity by existing residents? Stuff's never easy. In my view, we have an issue around the village heart, which is growing. I don't think it's a crisis point yet, but it's certainly reached the point of being annoying for a number of people who live within, say, 100 or 200 metres of Prospect Road for the few streets around it. What the staff are doing is trying to work through these issues and come up with a policy which could be trialled and then potentially applied consistently throughout a number of streets. But a trial is a really important way of testing things. I support what's essentially written up in part four. I support the white hockey sticks by way of a trial. I'd like to see how it goes. I'd like to see what the compliance is. If we regularly find people not complying with it, well, I'll be one of the elected members who says we've got to do something tougher. I also support part 3 because I'm never a fan of going places with lots of yellow lines. They look really unwelcoming, and it's just it's not a pleasant environment. So I'm always reminded when I was a kid in Angwin Avenue, the council put a roundabout in, I must be 35 years ago, and the roundabout resulted in an additional 36 signs. No parking here, no parking there, go around the roundabout chevron. It was just insane amount of visual pollution. I think the people who wanted to slow the speed down didn't realise that visual impact. So a few complaints were made and some of the signs got pulled back a bit and it looked a bit better. But often when you don't realise what you're going to be in for when you want a whole flood of yellow lines, it really should be the last step if other things don't work. So I'm happy with 4 and 3. I'm also happy with 7. I think having a meeting with residents is really important because some things need to be discussed. The street is wide enough for parked cars either side and a car to get through in the middle with 3 metres. It's not one of our narrowest streets. We have streets far more challenging than Myrtle Street. But of course, if you only live on one street, you don't understand how challenging the other streets are, and maybe you don't care. But we have to work out policy that works across all of our streets, and that is our dilemma. So I support the meeting and I support us come out with a good considered process going forward absolutely support what Councillor Groot has asked for now for 4 or 5 years, which is have a citywide hard think about this. But I really think we should do what's in part 4, which is trial the hockey stick markings. And if we need to move to full bays being painted like we had on Prospect Road for a while, then perhaps that's where we need to move next. But I think this is a good first step, and I'd be interested in how it goes and what the Myrtle Street residents think of it at the end of the trial. I will take it, that's me finished, I will take it in parts. But firstly, are there any further speakers to the motion? If not, Councillor Nguyen, do you wish to sum up?
Yes, just want to thank Mrs. Calusa for coming in. It must be very frustrating to live in a, what once was quite a street, now much more busier street. I also want to thank Councillor Groot for the amendment. I look forward to the upcoming meeting. I think it's really important for residents to be heard and for council staff to be there and elected members to be all on the same page, understanding the real issue. It's a complex issue, so I look forward to the outcome of that meeting.
Okay, thank you. That concludes debate, and I'll take it in parts. All those in favour of part 1? Carried unanimously. All those in favour of part 2? All those against part 2? Part 2 is lost unanimously. All those in favour of part 3? All those against part 3? It's a tied vote. I've mentioned that I'm in favour of part 3, I therefore cast my vote in favour of part 3. Part 3 becomes carried. All those in favour of part 4? All those against part 4? It's carried unanimously. All those in favour of part 5? You've all read it before, you're just refreshing, I take it.
Yes.
Those in favour of part 5? Does not support time parking restrictions at this time, so it is. All those in favour? All those against? Councillor Harris, I need to see a hand go one way or the other. All those in favour of part 5? All those, yes, all those against part 5? Part 5 is lost. All those in favour of part 6? Part 6 is carried unanimously. All those in favour of part 7? Part 7 is carried unanimously. Thank you, elected members. For members of the gallery who've come here for the Myrtle Street item, and in particular to the Deputy, thank you very much again for coming forward. Staff will be in touch about the response, but you've heard it here, but we'll go to you to distribute to all the residents along Myrtle Street, and also be in touch about establishing a time, an appropriate time to have that meeting. Will it be during working hours or not, and all those sort of questions will come back to you. Perhaps you can help us or help the staff coordinate that. Elected members will do our best to be there at a time that suits most of you. If that's all you're here for tonight, you're welcome to stay for the balance of the meeting. We know your interest in council matters is deep, but equally, if you thought you could spend your time better elsewhere, you're more than welcome to leave us too. Thank you very much for your interest. Okay, that's item 10.2. I noticed here we've got our representative from Norman Waterhouse here tonight. I'll seek leave of the meeting to pull forward item 10.4. All those in favour? Against it is thus pulled forward. Thank you. Now invite Felice to come forward. Join us at the table in case there are questions on item 10.4. And just go to the recommendation. I did raise a couple of issues with the CEO after reading the agenda paper and recommended that there be some changes to 736, 737 and 97. Seemed to me there was some confusion around average representation levels, and the statements were being made that we are basically on average when we're actually not on average, we're double. So I think the facts need to be stated clearly. The choices by the community and us are our choices, but I just wanted that to be made clearer. So talking to the manager of governance, just brief us quickly, manager, of these changes, or sorry, I'll refer to Felice if you just want to run through those with us, and then we'll take that as the revised recommendation, then open up for more general questions. So just to the revisions.
Thank you very much to you, Chair. So we've got a proposed revision to clause 7.3.6, just to make it clearer that the reference to an average elector ratio the ratio is as is up there. And of course, that is significantly higher than the council's current ratio. And then there's a change there to make that clear in 7.3.6. There's a further change to 7.3.7, or proposed further change, I should say, to compare the council's elector ratio with the elector ratios for other councils with elector numbers of up to 30,000 electors. So prior to or without these changes, the report compares the council to two other councils that are closest in number in terms of electors to the council. But this proposed amendment towards 7.3.7 will make that kind of a broader comparison and compare the council's elector ratio with 7 councils rather than just the 2. So, and again, just to demonstrate where the council's elector ratio sits in comparison to other councils who have elector numbers of up to 30,000 electors. The other change to clause 9.7, I guess, is consequential on proposed changes to clause 7.3.6 and 7.3.7. Again, just to reaffirm those comparisons and those averages, and make it very clear that when we're comparing the City of Prospect with, for example, Town of Gawler and City of Norwood, Payne and St Peters, the averages are, the elector ratios are closer. However, when you make a more broader comparison with 7 councils, being those 7 with 30,000 electors or less, then there is the difference in terms of elector ratios is certainly greater.
So, sorry to jump in. Is that this first paragraph should be all are overrepresented at the end of that 2.3 first paragraph, rather than and overrepresented?
Yeah, that's
It's
right.
just a small typo.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
I noticed that too just this evening. Yeah.
Yeah, just above the cursor there. That one should be rather than and.
So the changes are I accept that they're worthwhile changes to make so that it's clear to the community when we're comparing the council to other councils. Certainly one can compare the council just to the 2 councils with the closest number of electors to the council. If you take a broader comparison, you can certainly see differences. It is always very difficult, I think. I think we probably acknowledged that in one of our workshops. It's very difficult to compare councils. And there are lots of differences, elector numbers, area sizes, et cetera, et cetera. So it is a very difficult exercise to do.
Okay, thanks, Felix. Now, I'll just take any other questions. Depending on how many there are, I'll suspend many procedures if there's a lot. But are there any questions on this report? If not, I'll take a mover in a second. We'll move into debate. Councillor Bunnett.
Yes. It goes to the considerable number of options. I don't think my memory serves me correctly with the previous one that we had so many and it was so confusing. I mean, if I'm confused as a long time elected member being through a few of these.
They're restricted to a question at this point.
Yes, my question would be surely the members of the public are also going to be more confused.
That's a statement. So your question is why so many options?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Inflected at the end.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. In some ways, I see that as a positive. I think that there are so many options available that can meet the criteria for options, which is complying with ward quota ratios, reflecting communities of interest. I accept your comment, Councillor. I see it as a benefit. I think that if you're presenting the community with as many options that are available as possible, I would see that as a benefit. Remembering this is not the count in this options paper. This is a paper that I've prepared. It's not reflective of any preference. by the council at this stage, because this is that very preliminary stage where it's really just about giving the community as much information as possible and a whole range of options. And that's certainly what we've attempted to do, to give a range of options with reduced numbers of councillors, different numbers of wards, different kind of makeups of wards as well. And certainly we had a lot more options, you might recall, at the workshop. There were a number of other options as well that were presented, and for lots of good reasons they didn't make it into the options paper when we received your feedback. So I'm sorry that you find it confusing. If there's anything I can do to simplify it, I'm more than happy to.
Perhaps I have a follow-up question.
Further question? Sure.
So to me, the nub of it is, how is it going to be set out and how are people expected to provide their choice of options? Is it going to be set up that they're going to have to rate all of them in like an order from 1 to 8, or their top 3 or top 1? If I could ask that.
Thanks, councillor. Yes.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I guess at this stage, I believe there's going to be a survey prepared as well. I'm not across the entire public consultation aspect, but I believe there is some bundle of material, maybe.
CEO's asking that.
Yeah, through the chair to the manager government.
Correct, through the chair. So there's, I guess, 2 ways to submit comments or feedback. One of those is a general submission, which can be in any form, so some sort of report or written briefing or anything like that in any form. The other one, which will probably be the more popular one, hopefully, will be the use of the community survey that's been developed as part of the suite of engagement tools. And in that survey, I'm happy to perhaps circulate out of session if that's easier. It is ready to go. There are a number of questions. It won't be a ranking system as such. It might be, I think, more sort of laid out as option 1. Strongly agree, disagree, and then we'll collate that data in that form. But it won't be a ranking of all 11. That makes sense. As well as some options for free text input.
Yeah, thank you. Anything further, councillor, in terms of questions? Or are there any other questions out there?
That covers.
If not, you can always ask it during debate, of course, but councillor Rip.
Well, just another question, yeah. If on page 39 it says the options include noting all the above will also include the role of the mayor, why is option 1 highlighting that it will be plus mayor and then the rest isn't?
Sorry, attachment.
Yep, so page 39 of the agenda, I don't know if you've got access to the agenda, but it says on page 39, towards the bottom, it says the options include, in brackets, noting all of the below will also, in addition, have the role of mayor in the model and composition. Then option 1 says 4 wards and 8 councils plus mayor, and then the mayor's not referenced in any of the other 10. So I'm not sure why we would say plus mayor in option 1 if that was.
But not all the others. So just for consistency, yeah. Can you see it on page?
Through the chair, that in the cover report, correct. That is
fair
obsolete.
Okay.
Shouldn't be there. So it's the noting of all of it.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
So
That confused me. So
they will all
that's
have
correct.
the mayor.
Yeah, good.
Where would we be without mayors? So
How long have you got?
I'd be on a holiday somewhere, you know.
We could have a chairperson.
We could have a chairperson. So in all of the options, their ward maps or their options, it doesn't mention mayor in any of them. So there's consistency, councillor, in that.
Yeah, that's right. As long as the number 1 was a typo, then that's fine.
Yeah, and I presume the issue of mayor is discussed elsewhere in the options paper, mayor versus chair. So that question is dealt with separately to the options on councillors. Is that how? Okay, thank you. Good question. If there's no further questions, just checking my maths. Is someone happy to move this item and get it on the floor for debate as per the screen? Councillor Brooke, do you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, look, I will speak to it. So thank you. I know there's a lot of work that goes into these, and as frustrating as it is for us to have to go through this process, or at least for myself, I won't speak for other elected members. Thank you for what you brought up to the report. I think the report is very long. It's some 64 pages, which I think most people won't get past page 4 or 5. And I think that's a shame. I think the survey is going to be absolutely critical in trying to understand what people want out of their elected member body. And that's not a criticism of the author. It's just there's a lot of information in there. It's a hard read, I have to say. It's a very hard read. My mind doesn't take me back to the last one. I can't remember what sort of paper we put out to community consultation. I just can't remember. But this just felt like a really hard read. I'm really aware that this is going to go out for consultation at the same time as our budget. And I think that provides a risk and an opportunity. So the risk in the sense that we're going to be consulting on two major issues or major pieces of policy in the city at the same time. Opportunity in that, when we're talking to school kids on the budget, how great would it be to talk to school kids about how they want to be represented in the future? Or, when we're talking to somebody about this in the street, we also say, hey, we also got the budget out. Do you want to look at that as well? So that's just a comment I'm sure administration will take out of that as they wish, but there might be some opportunities for us to cross-pollinate both issues without confusing them. That said, I'll be interested to see how many people do engage in this process. I suspect it won't be a lot. And I think that's a shame because this is a really important thing that we do. But we'll see how it goes. So I'll support the motion, obviously.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ripp, just to speak to it.
Yeah, just to thank the staff and teams around this for the report and in presenting these options to us for consideration. Again, echoing Councillor Breed's comments. Yeah, I know that a lot of work's going to do, so I do appreciate what's been presented to us.
Thank you. Do I have any further debate? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I'm struggling in our community consultation. Is there, so again, similar with Myrtle Street, we have no face-to-face meetings with interested people or to explain the complexities or intricacies of things. So I'm thinking if I can't find it, or if it's the report of, through the CEO or the mayor can say that we're going to actually have a face-to-face opportunity for those that are voting in this to be able to explain some of the things to them. I think it's just absolutely missed the opportunity for these very complex things that we're asking people to undertake. I note, as has been noted before, it's coming out with our budget. I mean, what a wonderful opportunity to say, right, well, below all these, we only want to have, 4 elected members and a mayor and cut costs, So, yeah, I'm thinking I would like to move an amendment that there be a face-to-face or an opportunity for a public meeting to explain the proposal or the whatever.
CEO, can somebody help with some words? What does that mean to you? Hold a public meeting or
a drop-in meeting?
Correct. Through the chair, we have to do is not one plan specifically as part of the communication package. And I haven't been in the council before that's done that. It's not to say that we can't. But we're happy to look a way of doing it. Perhaps we're not having a public one that I'm aware of for the budget, given the COVID requirements around that is in a face-to-face session. But we normally would as required. So, but I'm sure we can work something out if we have to. Having said that, the communication materials do have my direct contact details on all of them. So there's always an opportunity that someone did want to meet, or we'll have a chat about any of them, then that option is there for them to initiate that, and we're more than happy to do so through that way. But we haven't intended on holding a session at the time.
So, council, you're still happy to move some sort of amendment with regard to this, so that staff facilitate a information session open to the public?
Yes, it could be more along the lines of a drop-in session. So, and perhaps between the hours we've had some other ones. So it's more or less opportunity, say between 4 o'clock and 7 o'clock or something. So that people that are at home can drop into the earlier one, and those at work can then, and then we're not accused of locking out certain sectors. So, so staff facilitate an opportunity for a drop-in public meeting.
Just looking at your CEO to make sure we keep that this is
So,
okay to interpret us what that means.
Through you, Chair, just perhaps a time frame. Over what
yeah,
period?
You're talking about on a day,
yes,
If I-
Manager?
I guess ideally, because there is a minimum 6-week consultation period, so we're wanting to do that earlier on, so that's within the first
2
2 or
weeks.
3 weeks, 2-3 weeks maximum,
Yeah.
if you're happy with that,
Yes.
councillor.
Yeah, within the first 2 weeks of, or first 2 to 3 weeks of the public consultation
yes.
phase.
Chair, is it 2 weeks?
Say 2 to 3, can't we, CEO? Is it? Can you work with that? Or
I think we'll make it 3, Chair. if it's
within
all
the
right.
first 3 weeks is not the Councillor Barnett's amendment.
Yes, yes, within the first 3 weeks.
And a drop-in public meeting is a bit tricky, so we just need some language. You're talking about you're talking about expanded period of time. We don't want a meeting running for 8 hours, do you? That's not what you're offering.
Well, it's not I'm envisaging what we've had for paint fee, what we've had for, we haven't just had, you know, a meeting that starts at 7 o'clock and then we take everybody through, or are there any questions? It was more that you've got the information up there, right? And so then people are able to have a look, and then there's a staff member there that can answer questions about things.
The Department of
So perhaps a public information briefing might be better than
Yes.
a meeting
Yes, yes,
covering working and non-working hours. I don't want it to be interpreted as a 1 hour meeting, no one
No.
turns up and we go, we'll tick the box. You're suggesting
Yes.
something broader and you haven't given us any words, so I'm really struggling, but I think that's what you mean.
yes,
4 to 7 on a selected day.
yes. Well, I mean, I'm guided by staff.
Yeah.
They know best what
Oh, Chair, through you, I mean, if we get an opportunity for a drop-in public information briefing covering, I'd prefer a time frame. So between 4 PM and 7 PM, perhaps on 3 days during that period, during the first 3 weeks. It's 3 days, isn't it?
Yeah.
3 days, take out working and non-working hours within the first 3 weeks, and then take to explain the proposal at the end.
Thank you, CEO. Councillor Barnett,
Yes,
happy with that?
yes,
Wish to speak to it any further? I'll do what I normally do, which is ask the mover and
Yes.
second it. Okay, thank you. Councillor Prudy, are you happy to incorporate that change?
Wouldn't roster too many staff on, but yeah. Sure.
It's just a yes or a no. I know
That was a very quick slide.
I,
Yes.
Getting beat, getting
Yes.
done.
dear Councillor Ritt, happy to
Yes.
incorporate. Thank you, thank you.
Yes,
Now, I now seek leave of the meeting. All those happy to incorporate. It's thus incorporated. Thank you. Councillor Barnett, I'm not sure how much time you got left, but probably not much. Did you wish to use any of it to sum up that, or have you? Thank you. Any further speakers to this item? Councillor Harris.
I'll do a question to show my ignorance, then I'll make a statement. The consultation, what do? We're going to send this out to everyone, email it, post it. I don't know, it's somewhere there. I haven't read it. I apologise.
See ya.
Through you, Chair, to the Manager of Government.
Manager.
Through the chair, a number of elements to it. So we will obviously cover the mandatory ones that are required by the Act, which is a notice in the public notice in the advertiser, which will be happening and is booked for later this week. Public notice on the website and also the Government Gazette. I'm not sure how many people pick that up. Separate to that, there will be the community consultation, which will be put on our online engagement hub and emailed out to all registered users of that forum. And other promotion will occur through the usual social media channels as well, so Facebook and LinkedIn. In addition, I've arranged for some corporate signage to be placed at various sites that we normally use.
All right, thank you.
So it's all on page 41, members.
Okay.
Anything further, Councillor?
Yeah, just one other question. We set up quite a while ago we had a group of people, large group of people, that whenever we were doing something, we contacted them specifically, about 70 or 80 people. Is that still exist? Does that fit in this or?
It's our online focus group.
Yeah.
Got rid of that.
So do we still maintain that?
Through you, Chair, I'm not sure.
Too many heads going no, so, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That answers my question. And just that, I'll go along and support it, but I totally disagree with 11, 12 options of things, and it definitely comes to a previous speaker that you'll get certain people who say, oh, there, we'll save $1 and have one person, or you'll get a few others. So I think there's too many options, far too many options, but if it fits in the way it fits in, I'll actually vote for it.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Nguyen.
Just slightly off track but related. I heard the government's manager saying that we're not doing a consultation, face-to-face consultation with regards to the budget. So why are we doing 3 face-to-face meetings, briefings for this?
Quick answer is because you just
I
decided
know,
to. The longer answer is, as elected members, we can decide how much consultation we're going to do on the budget, and that will come to us at our special budget meeting
Okay.
coming up. So hold that thought.
Yes. Good point.
Thank you.
Any further debate on this item? If not, councillor Group, wish to sum up. Sorry, Councillor
It's not
Pearce.
really debated, just award map option 5 is incorrect. It's
Page.
page 84, attachment 42. It's no big deal, but it should be 3, 3 and 2. We've got, oh, sorry, it's 2, 4 and 2. It's marked as 3, 3 and 2. Page 84.
Page 84, option 5.
Oh,
The 3 wards, 8 councillors.
Oh, okay, yes.
Ward 1 being the smallest. It's got 3. There should be 2. Should be 2, 4 and 2.
So Ward 1 should be 2 councillors.
Yep.
Ward 2 should be 4, and Ward 3 should be 2.
That's right.
Is that correct, Phyllis? Is that right?
yeah.
So that fits into item 3 in the recommendations, elected members, where we're about to ask to authorise the CEO of Norman Waterhouse to make any required minor adjustments. That'll pick that one up.
Yep.
Okay, good pickup. I don't know why the rest of you didn't pick that up. I just want to say, well done, councillor.
Well,
Pearce.
We were leaving it for councillor.
Yeah. If there's no further debate, councillor Group.
Thank you. So let's get it out there and see what people have to say. Look, I don't mind the idea of the drop-in information sessions. If one of those happened to be on a Tuesday night and overlapping with a workshop, that would be great as well. We can see firsthand how many people come and talk to us about these things. But it would be good, and maybe it would be good for us as elected everybody to think through those dates when we do come to budget. And I was going to mention the same thing as Councillor Nguyen, just to assist staff when they're doing their consultation around budget as well. You know, if we do another 3 for budget, that's 6 consultation rounds in the next 4 to 6 weeks. That's a lot of work, I suspect, for administration. So that's up to us to help direct that, I think, in the next, well, when we meet for budget in a week or 2. Apart from that, yeah, let's see how we go.
Thank you. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Those against, it's carried unanimously. Thank you. The members, thank you, Phyllis and Norman Waterhouse, the Empire, for helping us get to this point. 12 or 13 options, but you've restricted it to only 11. Thank you, very grateful. If you'd like to stay for the rest of our meeting, you are more than welcome. Trust me.
Thank you very much.
But also
That was a
welcome,
no.
Next time.
so welcome to leave
Thank
us.
you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Phyllis.
Thanks.
Okay, so done with 10.2 and 10.4. Now back to 10.1, community consultation results, Galway Avenue, Jellicoe Street, Ream Street roundabout proposal. Recommendation is on page 4. Is somebody happy to move it in its current form?
So can the items just be dropped and that screen just be dropped so we can see it in?
So can we just have the screen just, thanks.
Sorry.
Oh, I'd like, thank you,
Oh.
Jazz, you're a
Oh.
champion. Look at that. I heard a whisper that I missed questions without notice. Thank you very much. Are there any questions without notice? Councillor Barnett.
My question with that notice is, when is council likely to receive the revised, is it 21st tree guide, or whatever the new terminology is?
CEO, I'm sorry, Chair, 21st Century Street Tree Manual, that.
Ah, okay, yes, thank you. Through you to the director.
Acting Director for everything.
Through to there, it's currently on my list. At it, I suspect it's going to be there's quite a bit of work to be done to get to an outcome and to give me something back that's been well thought out and researched. And
So a couple of months away,
Yes,
June-ish.
yes.
Thank you.
Provide that answer to the residents.
Yes, indeed. Any further questions of that notice? There being none, thank you, Minister Secretary. Now to item 10.1. Community consultation results on the Galway Avenue roundabout. One of the ward councillors has indicated he wishes to move some changes. Can't do that unless it gets on the floor.
Can I ask a question first?
You can ask a question first, yes.
Early this afternoon, we received an email from the acting director, which was great. In that email, it suggested not to go ahead with item 2 in the recommendations. I'm just wondering whether.
That's for Collinswood, I think, not for
Oh, sorry,
item
when am I up to?
10.1. Galway
Oh, sorry,
Avenue.
wrong item.
It's all in the far
I've
east.
ruined it now. I'm going to say for the next one. Sorry, my mistake.
That's right. Well, while you've got the floor, would you be happy to move this to get it on the floor?
Look, I will move to get on the floor. I will ask up front if we can take any parts. I've
Yes.
probably not unlike other people around the table. I'm sure you've had some representation from people on this. I was actually intrigued by one particular aspect of one particular representation that was made to me, and that was around bus routes. And I kind of dismissed it initially, thinking, oh, well, yeah, whatever. But as I thought a bit more about it, it actually makes a lot of sense that bus routes have been cut from this, apparently, allegedly, I'm not sure how much truth is in this, and it'd be interesting to maybe find out, but bus routes have been cut from this road in the past, citing the issue of roundabouts. Now, I notice in the report it talks about the roundabout being designed in such a way that large vehicles such as caravans and buses can navigate through, and that's great. But I did have a question through the chair, whether we've had any conversations with the relevant government department that looks after buses. Is that DIT, I presume?
Yes.
And what those conversations have been to assist us with that. If I keep talking, we'll come back, maybe, I don't know.
Is it? Really? Oh, that's a magic trick. I'll take a little bit of bypass the CEO and go straight to the acting director. Have we had conversations?
Through the mayor, we've had informal engagement only. We haven't written to them formally. We've had conversation. There is issue with bus routes where you put in a tight roundabout. They don't like them. They don't have issue with large scale roundabouts with the concrete aprons, if you like, but they can also drive over. In this case, it's a very large roundabout, and with the turning circuits and the like, we don't think that even use that, but it's there as an additional option. So this style of roundabout doesn't give them grief, doesn't give them second thoughts. They certainly don't like the small, tight roundabouts that tend to put in secondary streets, secondary residential streets. Especially the stretch buses that just can't get around. So this really is a large scale roundabout. We're confident when we do formal consultations with them that we'll get back the same responses there. We do, as a matter of course, in the bus route, get their sign off on the final design. It's done just as a matter of expectation between the various parties. At this point in time, we don't believe there's any.
Thank you.
So, this is an interesting one that we tonight will approve the funding for next year's budget without the knowledge of knowing that DIT would definitely sign off on it on the basis that bus routes wouldn't be changed. So it's a bit of horse and cart here. So maybe the question is, if we got to the point where DIT said no, if you do that, even with the aprons and the whatevers, we probably will need to review our bus routes down that street. are we still locked in? I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it. Are we still locked into proceeding with the roundabout?
Well, technically we can rescind it. CEO, just timing wise, if you could ask your experts to step us through the timing of the decision making and commitments.
Certainly through you, Chair, to the acting director.
Through the mayor. So for us to move forward with this construction process, seeing that we'd be looking for a construction start date probably May next year, to get it so it runs over that financial year hurdles. We look for delivery of the May, June, July. We would be looking to, we've already got some quite good designs, so we'd be looking to probably engage DID in probably late July or August, and we'd be able to do the concepts, make sure we get ready to sign off. We'd allow 2-3 months to look through that process. We'd be looking to get out to market and have all that ready to go come up in December. And do the assessment and issue contracts and everything else. But yeah, we put for that engagement did probably late July or August.
So presumably the answer to your question, we'd have between August and December to rescind if we got in trouble. Or modify the design or something. That's essentially the question.
Yeah,
asked
that's
us.
right.
Do we have time to change our mind? Sounds like we do.
Yes. Although it'd be embarrassing if I rescinded my motion later on.
Sure, it's happened before.
Thank you for asking me to move this, Mayor. I wasn't planning to. The other comment I was going to make was around the consultation. So I'm just making sure I'm on the correct paper here. Apologies. That's right. So we only had 2% of people responding. Now, we had 74% of 2% of people saying yes, which is a great proportion of a low proportion, but we had a very low proportion of people who engaged with it, which could be argued one of two ways. Everyone's happy with it, so they didn't say anything, or it could be argued in a different way, and I just don't know how to accept that. So I'm just struggling with making a decision on the basis of recommendation 2, saying that there's general community support. I'm not convinced that's the case with only 2% of people responding. So I'll be interested to hear what other councillors have to say, particularly the ward councillors. I'm not, I'm in one of those positions which I'm not often in. In fact, I don't think I've ever been in before where I've moved the motion to get on the table, but may not be supportive of it. But we'll see how we go. But I'll be interested to hear what people have to say.
Thank you. I have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Wayne. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, I do. Everything Councillor Group said, I have written down, and I wanted to ask for clarification as well. Like, I know that we wrote a letter to DIT, was it last year, advising of our proposal, and I know that roundabouts are at our expense. Given that this road, we've got buses, big vehicles, trucks travelling through, is it normal to ask for contribution?
That's a question.
If that's a question.
CEO.
Through you, Chair, to the acting director.
Through there. In this instance, it is one of our roads. I cannot think of any example where DID will actually make a contribution unless we go to a black spot. This doesn't meet the criteria for that as a grant. So no, very good.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
And if we were to go ahead with this, can we get DIT to reassure us that no bus stops would disappear or be relocated? Because that's, you know, for the residents, you know, if the bus stops were to move further out to where it is currently existing, it will be a problem for them, or in fact disappear. So could we get that assurance, or ask them that that's one of the things if we were to put this through?
CEO.
Again, through you, Chair, to the acting director.
Through the mayor, we could always request that DIT does respect current bus stops, locations and bus route. I suspect you'll find it's very different parts of the organisation, different assessments. But we would certainly request it. No harm in requesting. We'll make sure that our voice is known on such an issue.
And
thank you, Councillor.
yeah, just my last point, given that only 2% of the total residents in Collingwood and Broadview participated in this, it's a very small number. I either think, one, it's not an issue for them, or two, it's not a major issue. And I'm just given the situation that we're in now in terms of budgeting and making decisions about other projects, I question whether this is a priority for us at this stage. So that's just a statement.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, it's on the table. Councillor Ripp.
I'd like to move an amendment, if possible, and amend part 3, where it says, and I've emailed this through to the ELT before, so hopefully you've got that. It says amend part 3, where it says of the proposed roundabout, in line. Yep. So of the proposed roundabout, and then to insert in one stage, commencing late in financial year 21-22. And being completed early in financial year 22-23. And revert to existing words. I was happy to speak to it. So, reason, well, first of all, to address the point of community that was raised in terms of community consultation, I had in my one-on-one meeting with the director, and I have in my one-on-one meeting with the CEO raised concerns that I was getting a lot of people calling me, obviously supportive of the roundabout, but wanting to know, was it just an information piece that was actually put out by the council, or was a survey? Because in the actual thing that went out, it wasn't actually a survey, it was an information piece calling for submissions. And for me, a lot of people were saying to me, well, I didn't fill it in because I didn't think it was a survey, in the sense that what went out was sort of an information piece. If you would like to give your submission, please do, but it wasn't saying that do you support the roundabout or don't you support it? So naturally, from what my understanding with those type of things, it's loaded towards potentially people who are against it writing in. So I was actually encouraged to actually see that it's still, with that type of consultation letter that went out, 74% supported it. Because quite often, if you put out a style that looks more informative with a request for you to make a submission, you're going to attract more people that are against it, something to make a submission. So the fact that 41, I think we had 74% in favour and 41 respond, I thought was that, I said to the acting director, I thought that was actually higher than what I was thinking we were going to get, considering that the letter went out not with like a DL style survey or a survey and built into the letter. I think I might have raised it from there as well. I can't remember, so apologies if I didn't. But I was concerned with the style that went out. But having said that, I'm actually encouraged that still 74% with that style supported it. The reason I'm moving this amendment to say in one stage commencing late in financial year 21-22 and being completed early in financial year 22-23 is for the fact that I don't want to see us the community being consulted on something and then us taking a full 2 financial years to deliver it. In the sense that I don't mind the funding being split so we can cope with a difficult budgeting pressure that we're under. So I don't mind if we commit to doing it and the funding spread over 2 financial years, but I don't want to see the delivery of that going all the way to the end conveniently of 22-23. So I don't think that's going to sit well with the community if they've been consulted on something and we take 2.5 years to deliver it. So that's where my thought with that amendment was, just to explain that.
Okay, thank you. CEO, is that clear to you what that meant by those words, and does that conflict with any other part of the part 3? Just to check the technicals on it.
Yeah, sure.
Through you, Chair, to the acting director, do you see any issues with this?
Through the mayor, no, I don't. It's in line with what my expectations would be for delivery. Basically, we'll get started solely this financial year through our contractual means. We're going to achieve that goal. So looking for it to continue beyond that expectation.
Yeah, so it clarifies, right? It does. It's not, okay, so technically, you know, it means fits in. So I'll now do what I normally do, which is ask whether the move is happy to incorporate the change.
I can't ask a question first, can I?
No, I'll take a brief question, as long as it's not debate.
No, it's not. I'm just trying to understand the difference between the proposed motion and the substantive motion, in that it sounds like, well, it seems the same to me, that the effect is that the money's still split over 2 financial years.
So the money's still, if I can answer, or that's I better check.
I normally allow answers.
I'm happy to say
provided.
no, and then we'll go to debate. I can ask my question.
As I understand it, the issue is that as it's currently worded, the money could be expended up to the 30th of June 2023.
Yeah.
I think what the amendment is stating is, no, we want it to be finished early in that financial year, in fact, in July or August 2023. 22. Not provide staff the liberty of having two stages. In other words, start at one year and finish it very late in the next one. That's essentially what I understand you mean. Trying to do any nods. So up to you, yes or no?
Sorry, Councillor, I was saying no.
So no, okay, then it becomes an amendment. Just speaking further to as a movie, you've probably got a minute or so if you need to. Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Ask again for a seconder to the amendment. If there isn't one, it'll lapse. It lapses. Okay, thank you. Anything further, Councillor Ripp, on the motion?
Look, I think, so I've got about a minute.
Yep.
Yeah, so I would obviously encourage and respect the feedback tonight on the proposed amendment. However, I still want to see this project done. I'm encouraged that the director can actually engage with DIT on that bus related issue that was raised. I've had, I guess, some questions, and I'm encouraged that we can still come back, and if the engagement we did is going to cause issues and we get a letter from DIT or something saying that it's going to affect the bus routes, and we've got the option of pulling it back. And if it's going to majorly affect the bus routes, I'll be the first one to bring it back myself. I wouldn't expect non-ward councillors to do that. So I do encourage you to support items 1, 2, and 3 tonight. And so we can get this ball rolling. This has been a long outstanding issue. I was inundated during the election period and since the election with people wanting to see this roundabout. I respect though that I have had a few people state that they are opposed to it for reasons being their concerns around bus, which we've talked about tonight, and one individual potentially not being able to get his caravan into the driveway. I did say that one individual response in email and had a conversation to state that, you know, we've got to look at the whole community, not just one person's accessibility to the driveway. So I don't, for me, that's not going to, and I was open and honest with them, that's not going to sway my opinion on what the whole community want. But this is it's a major problem at intersection. I've had a couple of near misses there myself because you can't you have to go all the way to into the intersection to see what's coming. It's incredibly dangerous when we've got roundabouts up the road and the buses can safely go around 2 roundabouts that are up the road. I don't think it's going to be a major problem for the bus driver to, for a major safety issue for us. We should be addressing the safety issue. If the bus doesn't get around other roundabouts, and this is going to be a large and safe roundabout, I don't think it would cause a problem.
Thank
So I
you.
encourage you to support it.
Yep, thank you. Any further speakers to the item? Councillor Pearce.
Yeah, look, I echo Councillor Group and Councillor Wynn's statements. I take on board what Councillor Whip says that some people might not have understood it, but there's a massive number of people that didn't respond, which leads me to believe there's not general community support for it. And it's a timely situation to be on our agenda with what we talked about in last week's workshop with the budget. I don't see this as a priority in front of some of the other items we had to squeeze out last week. Yeah, and unfortunately, you know, that amount of money, I think look, it's a great idea to have it roundabout, I guess, but there's probably summing up, there's many more issues that we are a high priority in my mind. So I wouldn't support it.
Councillor Harris.
Just a quick question to start. So you didn't support it, so are we talking to the amendment or the whole lot?
There is no amendment.
Right, so we're talking to the whole lot.
Correct.
Okay, I'm going to say straight that I oppose it, but I'd really appreciate my co-councillor for his concerns of the reason he's bringing it up, and at another time that might be good, but I'm opposing it for a few reasons, and in opposing the actual roundabout as one thing, and then the cost is another thing. I do want to point out that Ream Street, when it comes out there, is a problem area and something at some stage, and I have not got an answer of what can be done, but I do see the Ream Street coming out as a problem. I don't see the other side so much, but there, like most other people would say, that using it over 30 odd years and daily, that I don't think I've ever had a close one, but I've always had a struggle at Ream Street to see out. The answers that came back with regards to bus routes and things like that, but while buses that they make today may fit around and do fit around or whatever, I right at the moment, trust our acting director, our CEO, and everyone here, but the government we had just tried to pull that bus route out with a whole lot of others, I think, within the last 6 months. And there was a lot of noise by a lot of people that changed that. If this happens to our situation and they say, oh, we want to cut the bus route, but nothing to do with the roundabout, just want to cut the bus route, it will give them an, well, we're not happy now that that's there, it's mucked it up. And then we're not going to have a lot of noise. The squeaky wheel, put the oil on and it makes the noises. We won't have lots of people saying we don't want it like it happened last time, because they talk about Christie's Beach, Elizabeth, the whole lot. So I see that trust I don't have that something can go wrong with it. The cost, and I keep looking up at the acting director, because the last meeting I think we had, and we finalised the Redden and Rutherglen streets, the end results that were done, because you just came on board in your position as that, and I got the email, which was only within a short period of time, and to my understanding that was before we were going to finish that street and have the plantings and all these sort of things, we haven't got the money for it. So for now till next year or the year after, we're just going to have the bitumen at the end of the line. So I believe safety and things that we got should be fixed before we go on to the next one. I think there's other areas there that need money and all over the whole place. And lastly, I just want to finish with the survey and all that, people that sent it in, 11 against 31 and all those sort of things. Numbers, I'm not sure. You said you had a meeting and I believe you, I don't question that. But I go to the shopping centre every second day and that, and I've had people talk to me about it and that sort of stuff. So I've had a lot of feedback about it, that people that I was stunned had not sent in something that actually live on Galway Avenue. Perhaps they're in that black square that I can't read. I don't know what it says. They might be in there and I just can't read it. But I have to be honest, the cost, the trust of a government with the buses, and I might add any government, but current government with the trust, that I'm opposed to it. And I'm going to say opposed to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barnett.
Yes. I would have thought that the responses, if it's been such a burning issue, apart from somebody that can't get his caravan in, and some people get stiff necks at Green Street, you know, I've used that, and sure, look, a lot of these places, there are a lot of places around that could be considered dangerous, particularly, you know, if you're inattentive and, you know, not looking out. But on the basis, we're proposing to spend $550,000 on the basis of 31 people supporting. I find that pretty incredible. I mean, when we've done the 40 Ks and that for had several goes over on the western side for 40 Ks because it was so close. You know, 50, 1%, 50%, 49 and 50%. Yeah, I'm just struggling, particularly in our financial, you know, situation, that we're thinking of going ahead with this at this stage. I can't remember with Green Street, was there a consideration to close it? I mean, that's the problem child. Surely if you have a treatment of reams instead of the actual all the rest of it. So somebody, no, I can't remember, Milford Board councillors. So there was no suggestion that perhaps a closure of Ring Street might be
No,
a solution.
north. There's a proposal to close north and so.
Put-
If you're
put a
asking a
red
question,
light on
The one
north.
that's, got-
Yeah.
yeah,
Close ring.
not in my recollection, councillor.
15 years ago.
well, I don't think I can really support
Thank you.
at this stage until we get a bit more information. I don't know how many, what the crash statistics are and near misses, the whatever. 'Cause, I mean, I wasn't, part being over there and when any meetings and that were being held, so. Yeah, I'm not going to support it at this stage. I've got too many questions.
Finish?
Yeah.
Thank you. Just briefly from the chair, looks like this is going down, councillor, but and the mover and second, of course, and grateful to have the debate. This is a tricky one. If we we're going to do a roundabout, I'm not happy about the money, but we've been advised by staff it's a large thing, so it costs a lot of money. And please don't do an ugly one. So they want us to put the extra 150 grand or whatever it is to make it look beautiful. I reluctantly agree with that, but it's a lot of money. Even the pretty ugly one's a lot of money. So it seems that whatever we do here will cost a lot of money. I think the buses issue is not one that we need to worry too much about. When the bus route was changed or proposed to be changed, they didn't mention the other two roundabouts at all. They just wanted to get the bus route on Hampstead and then rationalise the number of bus routes altogether from the northeastern suburbs. And I suspect that will always be the reason, not roundabouts. Although I do understand the apprehension that some people in the community have about the roundabouts. I understand the directors told us that this will be if it was going to get up at some point, the newer designer roundabout, which has that flat bit of concrete on the outside of it so the buses can ride over it. The other two roundabouts we've got don't have that. So this would be the easiest of the three to get around. Just having a look on maps online, this is the only four-way intersection on that dual carriageway of Galway Avenue. So I understand there's apprehension and people assume that the roundabout should be the answer because the other two, one's a crossroad and one's a six-way, have roundabouts. Yes, but they're big devices. So I understand why some people say, well, this should have one as well. It doesn't look like that's going to happen tonight, but I do think that whilst this doesn't have the crash statistics, it's not a black spot. It does concern quite a few people who've spoken to me about it. It would seem that there's a better answer here, but whether that's some medians placed strategically or a better alignment of the feed from the single to the dual carriageway, I don't know. The recommendation came back saying it's a roundabout, but I'd have to go back and ask whether that's the only option we asked for, whether we asked for a safer treatment here, whether it be a roundabout or something else. Maybe there's a something else that when budgets do become available, we could consider. But I guess for me, there is a discussion here about it being a safe intersection design or not. It's the only four-way on that divided carriageway, and it doesn't have any sort of treatment. So I'm open-minded about it, but I understand where councils are at. We do have a pretty tight budget for the next couple of years, and the design work's done. So if we come back to it at some stage, we can do it. But just in closing, maybe there's another answer which makes it safer without going to this extent. That's all of us have spoken, I think. So, Councillor Groot, could you wish to sum up?
Thank you, Mayor, and it's been some good debate on this particular item tonight. Look, I won't be supporting points 2 and 3, just remind it's being taken in parts. I think our budget is really tight and this provides opportunity for us to do some other things within the budget over time. Notwithstanding that there is a need, some need, whether it's received need or actual need to deal with this intersection, but I guess the point that Mayor made is one that resonates with me. There might be some other options or some other treatments that are less costly, but or close to the same effectiveness as a roundabout. To Councillor Rip, I'd say it took me 4 years to get a $4,000 nappy trial in this council, so don't be too too dispirited by the fact that this may not get up tonight. I kept trying, I finally got there. So
these kids were teenagers by then.
That's right, exactly. It's way past the point of no return. But yeah, so there you go. I can't. Well, I support recommendation 1.
Okay, thank you. That concludes debate. Been asked to and agreed to take it in part. So all those in favour of part 1? It's carried unanimously. All those in favour of part 2? All those against? That item is lost. All those in favour of part 3?
Oh, I'm almost.
You're almost there.
Lucky wicket then. Didn't take me 4 years.
Even I had to take a second look
It took me
there.
4 minutes.
Yeah, hang on, I'm going to take that vote again. All
I
those,
don't do that.
all those in favour of part 3? All those against part 3? Part 3 is lost. Okay, thank you, CEO and staff, for preparing the report. Don't lose it. Never know. Okay, 10.1, 10.2 we've done. 10.3, Collinswood Shopping Centre Precinct Upgrade. The recommendations on page 32 and 33.
That's a brief question.
Yes, brief question.
So my brief question is, earlier today, we got an email from the acting director in relation to the LED lights for Cassie Street, which was recommended in the report as a recommendation, although I note that that may have been taken out.
CEO, we did have a discussion earlier about part 2, and staff have recommended on balance that not be put up at this point. Just want to talk us through that.
Yes, look, thank you, Chair, and look, I will refer to the Acting Director. Perhaps we should start with you, Acting Director.
Through the Mayor. So, following conversation on this matter, I think it's probably important that we go back and actually look at what's driving some of the thinking around what further work's going to be required here. I know there was a workshop, and that's where the part 2 came from, with the drop lights or the ground lights. I respected that, brought forward to the report, but in reality, I think it's actually more about now going back and actually thinking bigger picture and trying to come up with a body of work that's actually going to be more impactful in regard to that precinct, and actually do broader thinking, if you like, greenfield thinking in regard to what can be achieved at a larger scale, rather than actually getting lost in some of the ideas that might have been thrown around, but trying to add to something that people aren't necessarily 100% happy with anyway. So rather than actually continuing down a pathway that's been started, some of that, yes, it is positive, some of the plantings and that, but I do think there's a broader picture or a broader question that should be answered before we start spending further money on ad hoc components to something. So I'm suggesting it's withdrawn because of that avenue, and I'm suggesting that you go down the pathway where you do a more thought out, more universal approach to what can be achieved in a fairly busy precinct, and bring together all the conversation, discussion, workshops that you've actually had.
And through you, Chair, if I can just add to that, there's no denying this has been a huge overrun on stage 1. I did ask our staff to break it down, so you know where the cost went. I think all of us would be relatively up. I'm not sure the council's aware, but you know, the $50,000 doesn't go very far, especially when you take traffic management out. I just want to put right up front that this should have been brought back to council when it became clear that there was going to be a major cost overrun on part 1, stage 1. It should have been brought back for review. It wasn't, and as you know, not only have we used up, stage 1 and stage 2, we've gone over basically to 110,000. I support the acting director's view that now's the time to pause, reflect, go back, get councillors involved in saying, well, what is our vision? And I would encourage council to think about perhaps funding something properly going forward. But there has been a failing by administration to properly manage the project, to properly work the scope, and there's no denying that. Let's put that on the table. And I think that's highly disappointing. I understand why council would be disappointed. I'm disappointed. But we find ourselves where we are, and it's a question now going back to, as the acting director has suggested, to first principles and going, where to from here? We can't fix what's happened, but we can fix going forward. So that's where we find ourselves tonight.
Thank you, CEO, for the explanation. That's why staff recommending that item 2 is taken out. Somebody happy to move the balance? Councillor.
I'll move it to get it on the table, and I thank the CEO for his words and the acting director for his input as well. I've been bitterly disappointed, as CEO will be well aware, and Mayor and other councillors, that the delivery of this. I think the community are going to be really disappointed to hear, when I've had plenty of conversations to them saying we had 50,000 budget for stage 1, we had 50,000 budget for stage 2, but because the administration, because of the delivery of the project that was done poorly, basically not only have you got other council rates going to be spent fixing the overrun, but and you're not going to get your stage 2 at the stage. That just doesn't sit well in what I hear in the east at all. So I am disappointed that at this stage that $50,000 for stage 2 appears to be, I guess, put on hold, unless I've heard, unless I've misinterpreted this differently. I do understand the acting director's point, and I feel sorry for him being thrown into this in this way due to the poor delivery that's been done prior to him being put into his acting role. And I can understand that the acting director is trying to pick up the pieces with it, and I respect him for trying to do his best to pick up the pieces with that. I do understand the broader need for the North East Road Master Plan, not just for stage 1 and 2 stage 2 of Collinswood, but to go up to the ABC building, to go up to potentially Hampstead Road as well, to look at how do we sort of fund a proper master plan, looking at the precinct as a whole, not just the shopping precinct. So I understand the reasoning for point 3. And I do understand the reasoning to hold point 2, just to make sure that the traders and everyone's there. So look, I will go along with this, but I think please note that the community will be incredibly annoyed to hear that stage 1's had a $63,324 overrun, and they're going to now miss out as a result and be penalised. I don't think the East deserves to be penalised in that way. That's just that's a statement, but I tell you, I will cop it on the street if we don't see some serious movement on this. Not only just upgrade, but the North East Road Master Plan, because at the moment they're going to be losing out 50,000 for what was budgeted for in stage 2, because nothing's been delivered in stage 2. It was only to fix up the uplighting, the planting and the art. That was only what was in stage 1. So, and I'll be absolutely making the community clear of that, because I've got to be honest with them, because I've gone out there and put out a flyer last year saying, hey, you're going to get 50,000 for stage 1, you're going to get 50,000 for stage 2, and it's clearly going to not be the case. I am encouraged that I believe elected member working party reference group will be formed by the CEO. I would actually be hopeful if someone's potentially prepared, because I can't do that as a mover being in the ward, but to put some time frame around when that will actually be happening. I don't want to see that happening in 6 months. I mean, I would like to actually see that our first meeting of the elected member working party reference groups actually happens within the next few weeks, because it's my understanding we've already done some work, at least for the Collinswood Shopping Centre precinct, on the North East Road Master Plan. So, I mean, we could easily get some things moving, I would think, relatively quickly, and I'd be welcome to hear what people's thoughts are around putting a time frame around part 2 to get it rolling. And maybe because we've, like I said, we started master plan work, some of it is already underway. But yeah, I wouldn't want to see this going into the Never Never Land, because I think the community would be really disappointed.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councillor Harris, who should speak to it?
Just very briefly, almost endorsing everything that my co-councillor has said. The second part of the 50,000 went in the first part, so it did get spent somehow and some sort of things. I've always been disappointed that one of the things we never tried to do up there is actually put a toilet, because it's been the main thing that's come from a lot of people, the shops, a public toilet. It's called a shopping centre. That's what it's been said to me, called a shopping centre. And we either let old ladies come and use our personal toilet, or no one goes, you go home. So I have that disappointment. A lot of the stuff we're looking at, so I'm glad of the current now point 2, that it gives us a chance, and I'm assuming it will be us, that gives us a chance to follow what Councillor Rip received, to move down to Channel 2, take in a bigger area and that sort of stuff. And for me personally, it gives us a chance to make a noise that some of the nighttime stuff we're looking at, lights and all these things, and I love it in my backyard and in the parkland. But if you've got a shopping centre that's not open at the night time, the lights in the night time might not be as good as something we can do in the daytime, i.e. toilet. So I'm supporting it, and I'm supporting it because I saw the CEO and the mayor nod their heads that he would try and get this working group together in the next couple of weeks to start. So I'm asking people to vote for it, and all be what's happened before. Let's get out there and straighten it out.
Thank you. Further debate, councillor Barnett.
Yes, I mean, despite, you know, a few of the roadblocks that have happened because apart from the project sort of management issue, I think it's just been that where there's been a strong desire on council's side of things and some residents around there. But when you don't have the major players like in the shopping centres and the other hall, I mean, it doesn't make it any easier to get some desired outcomes. So I think it's better to just have the pause, the reflect, and I mean, it's somewhere it didn't hit the right mark, and I don't know how that came about. The popularity, the lack of popularity, the artworks we had on our side, and yet across the road you had a very simple, vibrant one, which was an instant, you know, hit. So a few learnings here. I think it's good that we pause, we reflect, and then just say, well, if we broaden it, we might get a bigger sort of splash effect of an improvement or something. That's a better result.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Wing.
I'm not sure whether anybody has put in an amendment. Can we have a time frame to point 2 and point 3 as well?
Potentially. What would you suggest is the current order of debate on the floor?
That letter then working part of it, so it would be formed by the CEO, guided by CEO, and
We said a couple of weeks.
2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Why you went to the toilet?
In May 2021?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Is that
4.2?
4.2, and I'm not sure about for the report.
Sorry, CEO, could I extend that question and ask whether that's possible to have in order to inform this budget session? In other words, could we see it in May? Apparently there's a need for a toilet in this room, and not just in the shopping centre, because a lot of people have gone.
It's been 3 hours.
Well, they can all come from the shops. Yeah.
Sorry, CEO.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I just need to ask the director, if we did manage to get a group of elected members together in May, would the decision affect the budget? That's what you're asking.
No, is it possible to have item 3 brought to us in the May council meeting to inform a budget decision in the June council meeting? Like, it's not the master plan, it's a budget to develop the master plan.
It is possible, but we will miss out on that.
Yes. Yes.
But we're not spending money on the roundabout.
Yeah.
Sorry, the reason I just extended Councillor Ween's question is because we have headroom in the budget. That is all a matter of perspective, councillors. But if it isn't brought to us in May, it will therefore default to the 2022-23 budget deliberations, which puts it further away. So the question is not so much about headroom; it's about timing. I'm sure that's why you asked, Councillor Ween. It sounds like that's possible. Do you wish item 3 to also say be presented at the May council meeting?
Yes.
If the CEO can accommodate that.
Would that be possible?
Yes, it's through you, Chair, yes.
Seeing head movements that more nods than not nods, so I'm assuming that's possible. So thank you. Councillor Ween, do you wish to speak to either of those 2 changes?
No, I think it's pretty clear.
I'm happy to ask the mover, Councillor, if you're happy to incorporate that change. Interpret that as a quick yes. Councillor Harris, a seconder. single thumbs up, which I'll interpret as a yes. I now seek leave of the meeting to incorporate. All those in favour? Thank you for not putting the thumbs up. It's now incorporated. Makes my life easy. Thank you. Anything else, Councillor Wing?
No, thank you.
Any further debate? And just from the chair, this has not been a moment of glory for any of us. It's all right. Thank you, CEO, for taking the blame. But this, we have to answer for this too. So it's not a proud moment for any of us. We need to recover from this somehow. Yes, the deferral or the non-adoption of the Galway Avenue roundabout provides some headroom in the budget. But remember, our current budget is predicated on a $750,000 deficit. Okay, so we're already behind the 8 ball. So just be cautious. It's a bit like saying my credit card's got some limit on it. Let's go and spend it. But I do think if we're going to do something, we're going to do something in next year in this precinct. It should get in the budget. Otherwise, it's going to pop up as a variation throughout the year. And we know how well we don't like those. So I would suggest that some way forward should come to us in May. I'd encourage the CEO, if this gets up, to call that session between the 4 ward councillors who either have or touch on that precinct and their wards together with myself and staff to get that moving pretty quickly. It's likely we could provide some shape around what that May report might look like, along with technical advice from staff. I have to say, I'm not a big fan of a master plan on a road we've got no land, because we spent, I think, over $100,000 on a master plan on Mainmouth Road, and essentially got a design which is just so hard to deliver that I'm not sure we've got good value out of it. We actually might be better off learning from the master plans that we know have worked and the ones that we know didn't work, and make our own mind up about the section of North East Road that we control. I could be wrong, but I wonder whether we're better off spending money on outcomes rather than plans, but I'm happy to take that to that discussion. Either way, we won't get a master plan or outcomes unless there's any budget. So I think we need to push it into May. I appreciate the director reminding us that would mean that would not be included in the public consultation round, but them's the breaks with that sort of decision making. So happy to commend this to you and on those terms, and look forward to the working party getting moving. If there's no further debate, back to you, Councillor Ripp, to sum up if you need.
Look, thanks to Councillor Nguyen for the amendments there. I think it makes it, I guess, set in stone pathway forward. So do appreciate that. Obviously, yeah, let's take what's happened and yes, move on and look to have a master plan or a scope of outcomes. However, we want to, we'll thrash it out more at the elected member working party reference group. But let's hope this will lead to some good outcomes for us moving forward. So I commend points 1, 2 and 3 to you.
Thank you. Concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Excellent. Moving on to 10.4 is done. Item 10.5, the third budget review 2020-2021. I did ask a question about a table within the report, and just to note there is a slight error on page 112. The table refers to BR1 and BR2, but it's actually BR2 and BR3. The numbers are correct, just the headings are incorrect. And Councillor Green will love this. I asked, why does the green arrow point down? And Ginny said, what are you talking about? It's a red arrow. But the last laugh was not on me, because I said, because it seems to me that we are pretty close to being within -1%, and therefore it should be a green arrow. Could you please confirm? And over to the director, could you please confirm what it should be?
Yep, I can confirm it should be a green arrow.
So what I saw, what I perceived was correct.
I saw you saw what.
So the table should show a green arrow. So we're back inside our KPI.
Green tick.
It's a green tick.
Clarify.
Sorry, Director, is it a green? It's a green tick, isn't it? Because it's within.
I thought you said tick. Not arrow.
Not arrow.
Yeah. It's a difference.
It's a little tick, but it's a tick.
So it doesn't matter.
So just so that's just a correcting table on page 112, not the actual recommendation. So somebody having moved the recommendation as presented. Councillor Group, wish to speak to it.
Look, just to ask 2 questions. First is, One of the favourable items is the parking infringement income of 90K. Can I just ask whether that's a sustainable increase over a longer period of time, or is this going to be a blip in this budget review only?
So, CEO.
Yes and no, councillor. No, it's not sustainable necessarily over a longer time frame unless council decides that that would be an approach you'd like us to take. It's the result of the blitz that council raised because of parking issues.
Yeah.
And I think the chair pointed out today, we're about educating, not necessarily raising revenue. But yes, that's the net position, so it was actually quite useful. Does that, sorry.
Yeah,
Chair,
no,
I don't know
absolutely.
whether that answers the question.
I have
Yes,
over the
sorry.
years contributed to the income raising, and I've learnt from it at the same time. So
you.
it serves two purposes, as I'm sure some of my other learner colleagues have been. The other question just was in relation to the reduction in staff training of 41K. That's a positive from a financial point of view, negative from the fact they didn't get training. Is that a COVID impact still?
Yes, through you, Chair.
Okay, good. That was all I had. Good to see we got a green tick.
Yes. Did it look green to you? No, don't answer that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Pearce, wish to speak to it?
No, I've got a couple of questions also though. With the fines, for rates fines, 12,000. When did we give COVID relief? Is that just for the first 2 quarters?
CEO?
Yeah, through you, Chair, to the director.
Through the chair, we resume collecting fines after December.
Right,
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it's just, okay, first 2 quarters. And also elected member expenses, 11,000 saved. Is that because of COVID? No conferences? Okay.
CEO?
That's my understanding, Chair. Yes, correct.
Okay. Yeah, no, good report. Very happy.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Ripp?
Yeah, in terms of the additional parking for income of 90,000, I say, well, done to the staff for going out there with the parking blitz. Sometimes you can educate till the cars come home, but when with certain parking behaviours, you hit people with a slight fine in the hip pocket, and they quickly learn not to continue that behaviour. So I think it can work either way. Can I just ask what the fee did we see a massive increase in complaints with the extra parking income that was received, or was it not?
CEO?
Yeah, through you, Chair, no. If I can just add to that, we've had a very much an educational approach before. I think most people realise it was a fair cop.
Okay. Well, look, on that note, could I potentially move an amendment that, and if this isn't going to work with the CEO's timeframes, just let me know that by the end of June, the CEO, by the end of June, a report to come back via a council workshop to increase the parking blitz sequences in the city of Prospect, to look at options for increasing parking blitz frequency in the city of Prospect. But by the end of June 2021, a report be presented to a council workshop.
Just wait a minute, Secretary, if you could.
By the end of June 2021, a report to be presented to a council workshop at options for consideration to increase parking blitzes in the city of Prospect. Report be presented.
Parking enforcement blitzes,
Yeah.
parking enforcement blitzes in the whole city or just the village heart, or you're not fussed to do?
No,
Okay, and
because there's plenty of parking problems across our city.
just conscious,
Oh, sorry.
conscious, councillor, that you're on a budget item, and I think you're talking about road safety and parking availability issues, or are you talking about money?
Oh, correct.
It's your amendment, just
Yeah, by then a report be presented.
Revenue from. You could say consideration to increase revenue from parking.
Oh, revenue from part 3. Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Just to tie.
Yeah, to tidy it up, I see what you're saying. By then the report be presented to council workshop for consideration to increase revenue through parking infringements through our parking blitz, recent parking blitz approach. I think that's what I want to see if we can look at that
Okay.
approach even more.
I'm happy with those words
I
and
needed to
spelling.
be presented to council workshop to consider options. So after council workshop, goes to consider options for consideration to increase revenue. Report be
As
presented to
per
council.
our recent, rather than through, as per our recent parking blitz approach.
Workshop. I just said after workshop, it goes to options. There's going to be some linking. Where so, yeah, to council workshop outlining. Yeah.
Thank you, Manager of Governance.
Please.
I think I heard a voice. No, right here.
To consideration to increase revenue as per our recent parking blitz approach. Yes, happy with that.
If you wish to speak any further to it,
Yeah, look, I do. I think we've done a lot of education in the city of Prospect, and I'm encouraged that clearly people know they were doing the wrong thing when they were getting the fines if we haven't actually seen an increase in complaints. And we have a wide range of parking issues, not just in narrow streets, but parking issues right across the board in our city. And I know Councillor Harris and I get parking related complaints quite often, both narrow streets and non-narrow streets, with people not doing the right thing. But at the end of the day, you can educate sometimes so the cows come home, but if people are just going to keep doing the wrong thing and we're going to keep getting complaint after complaint, then we actually do need to look at the success of our recent parking blitz approach and options whether that could be extended. Because at the end of the day, sometimes you can educate to the cows come home, but if people can continue to perform the poor behaviours, sometimes one single fine could be enough to stop that. And as much as it's tough, at the end of the day, sometimes education isn't enough on its own. And I'm actually encouraged by the recent parking blitz approach, both that we didn't see a massive increase in complaints, that people took ownership of their fines, knew they were doing the wrong thing. But equally, we probably saw, people would have seen us, the staff out there in the community, actually acting on the myriad of parking complaints we get. And this actually visibly shows our community that we take your complaint seriously and we're going to get straight on top of it. So I thought it was an excellent approach, and I'd like to see options for us to consider the increase of it. And let's be honest, yes, it will help with the revenue as well.
thank you. I'll now do what I normally do. Ask the mover, you're happy to incorporate?
Can I do what I normally do? Can I ask a brief question?
Sure.
It's just a point of order. Let me call it a point of order. Report presented to a council workshop. Council workshops don't normally have reports presented to it. Council meetings do. We normally debate issues as an item at a council workshop. So I'm just not sure how that transmission will happen. And I just thought that was worth raising, because it might be that there's not a spot between now and the June for a discussion on this, which is what I think the council is trying to get to.
What section of the Act are you referring to, Councillor?
157.
That's not related to this item, Councillor, so it's not a point of order, but I'll take the question. The workshop can have anything presented to it. There's no law against any form of anything.
Okay.
There's no decision at a council
No,
workshop.
absolutely.
So we can always have information presented to us, so there's not an impediment that way. CEO, the other question was, can we fit it in our schedule by the end of June?
We can, Chair, and we could certainly call it a discussion paper or the.
Yeah,
I'll withdraw the question. Yes.
it's a quicker discussion, a workshop if we've read it beforehand, is essentially the.
It'll probably be circular.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So yes, thank you. And oh goodness me, what have I done? Pierce,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes.
What I've done is not put my glasses on. Here we go. So I'll now put it to the whole meeting. All those in favour of incorporating that change, against is thus incorporated. Thank you, Councillor Ripp. I think you ran out of time. Any further debate on this item? Councillor Harris.
Yes, I put up my hand then and supported it, and I still will at the end vote. But I do have that concern that I would have liked that we're going to have this meeting, this report about continuing the blitz, because it helps us to make our roads safer and more comfortable than using the words to increase our revenue, because that's what people, I have learned since we've done the last blitz. Many people have danced in front of my house with a piece of paper, and I learned new dance steps. But all they talk about is increasing the revenue. So I would have liked to just say, and I'll still support it, that the reason we're doing it is because it's encouraging people to be safe around schools and do the right thing.
Thank you.
Too late to change.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barnett.
Yes, from the complaints I've received from residents who are angry about all the naughty people not doing the correct things in parking and literally screaming out, where's the, the parking inspector, what's council doing about it? So I'm certainly happy to support the amendment. And it has been noted that some of the residents that have been angry about, these things happening to them, especially around the school areas, it's at school drop-off and pick-up times. Yeah, so they're more than happy to see the inspector. And so I think far outweighs the number of people dancing around with being,
Or,
infringements.
yeah.
And again, the whole reason that we're doing it is the law is the law and people should be abiding by it and it should be made safer. That's the whole, I don't think the laws are there to make things more dangerous.
Thank you. Just briefly from the chair, support it. The underlying report is great news. Thank you, CEO, for working on that, getting us to the point where we can get a green tick. That's such a funny story. Because it's quite important. We started off this budget with quite a significant deficit, with a plan for deficits for 4 years, which should worry any elected member. The audit committee has said, do you really realise what you're doing? Are you actually going to get that big surplus in year 5 to make your average fit within your 5-year averages? It's always a very scary question because I think the audit committee people are smarter than me. You know how to answer those sort of questions. And this year, this coming year, to have that reduction, the Galway Avenue roundabout is something we should give pause for thought on whether we can get ourselves in a better position again, because not having a deficit puts us in a much more powerful position to consider things that come before us, like grants or other matters. And we know that we're in that painful position right now. In terms of the parking thing, I think it's not a bad idea. I agree with Councillor Barnett and Harris that the key issue is enforce the rules that you've put out there and let people know that you will enforce them. And I'm grateful to the CEO for cracking down on this. We've certainly said plenty before, but it was your intervention, CEO, that made it happen. I think it was a good intervention. Going forward, I don't have any problem with the repeat, and there's nothing wrong with us hiring one of those digital signs from perhaps a local business who hires them out. He may or may not be in Alpha Road with the reversing problem, to say parking enforcement blitz underway or next week.
Ongoing.
You wouldn't believe how often governments headline a blitz and people still get caught. If you get the communication right, it's actually amazing how many people come to you saying, could you please have one of those blitzes because I'm getting really annoyed what's happening in my street. And other people who get a fine talk to their friends who say, didn't you see the sign? I mean, what were you, blind? Or you deserve it. So if the communication's right, we can actually achieve good compliance, good amenity, and raise some money. Thank you. I don't think there's anyone else left to speak. Is it? No one wishes to speak. Back to you, Councillor Group, if you wish to sum up.
Look, I think the issue about the sign is quite a good one. I think that resident has offered to provide us with some signage at no or very low cost. So great opportunity. But I would remind people this is, of course, a budget review, not a budget review paper. And just my thanks to the director and the manager for all the work they've done on this. It is great news and sets us up very well for the next quarter's review as well. Hopefully just as positive, if not more, with maybe a bigger tick.
Indeed.
Slightly higher size font or something. I don't know.
That concludes debate.
Yeah.
Thank you. All those in favour? Against, it's carried unanimously. Well done. Item 10.6, policy review, volunteer management policy and code of conduct. Somebody happy to move it to get on the floor, page 137. Councillor Barnett, would you speak to it?
Yes, I've read them all and I just think it's common sense, and as with a lot of these sorts of volunteer management, there are areas that things sort of change. That according, when you're dealing with people, you're dealing with codes of conduct and safety and things like that. So, yeah, I just think it's timely. It's a good point to raise, and commend the council's volunteer section and our manager there with the report there about the number, particularly, we're coming through COVID and out the other side a little bit more. So yes, I think it's a really good report to have, and gives us the overview, and the changes sort of make sense. So I think that'd be supported.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Group, you should speak to it.
Look, I think Councillor Barnett made some very good points there. I really like the co-design principles of how the policy was consulted on. I think that was fantastic, and just want to acknowledge staff's effort in doing that, because I think it's really important. But yeah, support the motion.
Any further debate? Councillor Wynne.
Can I just say that volunteer management is really important to an organisation. I sort of asked my other workplace, how much is it worth, the volunteer hours? And just from the 3 months, it's 2,145 volunteer hours. So I asked, and they said it's equivalent to roughly about $40 an hour. I sort of did the sums. Just during that period, it was around $80,000. So if you times that by 4, that's 300 plus hours. So that's a lot of money of time for volunteers to contribute. My question is, do we have a dedicated volunteer coordinator to oversee the volunteers in the city of Prospect through the chair?
Yes, we do. A staffer.
Is that a full-time position, or is that a tagged onto his or her role?
Through the chair, I'll have to ask the director.
Through the chair, we do have one full-time equivalent and volunteer coordinator. Essentially, that manages a lot of the HR processes of recruitment and induction and scheduling. The volunteers themselves then obviously have essentially site overseers or task overseers. That's what's then tacked on to me. In terms of the coordination, one.
Thank you. Anything further, councillor?
Alice.
Through the chair.
Sorry about
Anything further?
Thank
you. Any further debate? No, Councillor Barnett wishes to sum up.
No.
That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. Move on, item 10.7, submission to the Australian Building Codes Board private certification discussion paper. Recommendations on page 176. I'm not sure how much discussion there is on this. I think, Director, you've got a staffer online. Should we need to ask questions about this item, or we might have gone to sleep?
Through the chair, he is watching through live stream and can text me if there is a question that is beyond my.
We have a viewer.
What a champion. What a champion. We are live and on. I'll just by show of hands, how many people have got questions on this item? If there's not, I'll go straight to a mover. I'll ask for moving. If not, okay, somebody happy to move it to get it on the floor. Councillor Pearce, do you wish to speak to it?
Look, just quickly, I think the private certification is could be very dangerous. And I think our director and manager have been all over it for a long period of time, and it's really, really important. It's something that needs to be carefully looked at, and I believe we are looking at it carefully.
Yeah. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Barnett, do you wish to speak to it?
Certainly, it's been a bugbear of mine and some other residents' associations about this particular matter, and we've seen how it can fall down in one particular, in Richmond Avenue. Yeah, I think we've, it's got a good tone to it. I think this. I mean, mine would have been much more. Less palatable, I guess. Those strong feelings that are out there, and particularly by some residents who have actually had this things happen to them and they're, various stages of their building planning and they're, not very good process. I think we've got a tried and true process with our council planning and building officers regime. And I just see it's a weakening of rather having the private certification. So that's my views.
Thank you. Any further debate? And just from myself, I really like the 10 points put out by the Building Codes Board, listed on page 177. I thought they were very valid questions, and they're really statements, they're not questions. And those policy positions, I think, are a very good starting point, and I wouldn't actually like to see any of them diluted. I understand that the staff are having difficulty giving us a complete response because it's an online questionnaire that's 63 questions long. So they've given us samples in the report, but I would like there to be adhesion in our responses to those principles on page 177. And also to reflect what we've found at Belford Avenue and other places, that the certifiers don't visit the finished building to have a look at it. They rely upon written representations from various parts of, or various contractors within the building contractors empire and the building contractors themselves. They have a vested interest in getting that certification through. And in any other aspect, it would be checked physically or validated in some way, and it's not. The second thing is that the certifiers don't actually allow enough money to visit the site because they're in a competitive marketplace and they tender their fees, and they're competing for that work through generally the developer or the developer's agent. So they have a vested interest in winning the job. So not only price point, but they don't want to offend the developer because that's who's going to give them the next job. And I guarantee you, if you find a certifier who's a stickler for rules and tells people off, I'll tell you how many extra jobs they get. It'll be none. And you just can't have that. That'd be like asking a copper to enforce, traffic matters, and people only letting the one work who actually lets them off all the fines and watching the chaos that happens as a result of that. Or a parking inspector, going back to the previous item, who never finds anybody. Everyone would love that, except the people who want the laws to be enforced. So there is a huge conflict in this area. Local government has mentioned these conflicts and raised these conflicts and brought them to the attention of every minister that's ever proposed something, and have been ignored for a long, long time. So I'm glad to see that finally this board has decided that there is a problem, got a report, says there's a problem, put out these points here, which to me they'd get to the nub of it. And I hope our responses not only zone in on these principles, but also reflect what we've found on those other projects within our own jurisdiction, and by way of providing examples of what happens when it goes wrong. What happens is the new owners who move into the property ask us why we didn't do our job. And often it's not us that didn't do our job. So I think, more power to the arm of the staff and making sure this stuff is heard loud and clear. So I'm happy to endorse the recommendations. Any further debate? If not, Councillor Pearce, you happy to sum up, or don't need to?
I don't need to know.
Thank you. Please debate. All those in favour? Against, it is carried unanimously. Next item is item 10.8, Eastern Health Authority Draft Annual Business Plan and Budget. Recommendations on page 182. Somebody happy to move it in its current form? Councillor Barnett, we should speak to it.
Yes, and just pointing out that that on page 182 of that report, the states that after 2 financial years of declining contributions, City Prospect's contribution has increased by 7.24% for 2021-22. But the main driver, as it is with the other councils, is the increased number of public health complaints, because we have an increase in proportion of food businesses now. We've been so successful with all of this, so that as you can see on page 182, there's an 8-year average annual charge. The little table down there. So when that's smoothed out For example, in 2015, 2016, we actually were minus 1.2%. The other one was 0.61%. So it just really depends over the years when it flattens out what is actually happening in your city, in all the areas that Eastern Health Authority work on behalf of our councils. So that is the main reason for that. So as it says, it represents good value when viewed across multiple years based on the endorsed funding model of the subsidiary. I recommend the report to you. Oh, and I forgot to add that in reading the annual business plan, you can really see the extent and the amount of work
Yes.
that Eastern Health Authority does. And it was particularly onerous for the staff during COVID-19 era as well. So I think that as a member of the board, I think we've got really excellent staff. They do a very good job in difficult circumstances.
Thank you, councillor. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Harris, wish to speak to it?
No, the previous speaker done an excellent job.
Thank you. Any further debate? That concludes debate. Sorry, councillor Barnett, just to sum up your own speech, basically. Well,
No,
thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? It's unanimous. Thank you. Item 10.9, the Eastern Health Authority Charter Review, page 216. Somebody happy to move it in its current form?
yes, I'll move it.
Thank you. Councillor, wish to speak to it?
Whoops, sorry, it's just in on my screen here. I think it's fairly, it's been through a lot of debate and to the other council subsidiary charter partners, and also through EHA's audit committee. So hopefully that the rest of the council, thank you, will agree through, will agree with the changes, and might point out on page 218 where it says that the Eastern Health Authority Audit Committee suggested that the chair of the Eastern Health Authority should be an independent member. But then it goes on to say that, well, one consideration is that Eastern Health board members are prohibited from receiving remuneration for attendance at meetings, and therefore it's unlikely the independent chair would consider this role without remuneration. So at the moment we've had for the status quo has been that none of us, including the chair of Eastern Health Authority, receive any remuneration. If you want an independent chair, just like you have our independent audit committee members, our independent, other our planning cap, we have to pay for them. So if people don't want Eastern Health Authority's budget to be increased, well then one of the reasons that you wouldn't really want to vote for that. So I think that that's about all. I commend it to members to vote as is.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Groot beat you to it, Councillor Pearce.
Oh,
It was a bit of a snail race, tell you what.
I've
Anyway,
got a cramp in my arm. Actually.
Yeah.
That's right.
Councillor Groot, you wish to speak to it?
Look, I think again, Councillor Barnett's done a tremendous job in outlining the charter changes, so I'll leave it with that.
Thank you. Any further debate? There being none, Councillor Barnett, any need to sum up?
No.
Oh, that concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 10.10, LGA Ordinary General Meeting 2021 voting preferences for topics on page 284. Somebody happy to move it in its current form? Councillor Groot, wish to speak to it?
Look, just a comment. over the years, I think all of us have seen these come through twice a year, and I'm just surprised there's only 4 items for debate at the meeting. I was wondering if there's any sense of why there's not more. I'm happy that there's only 4, but normally we have a lot of policy issues to work through that councils have put up. Is that? I'm not going to offer an explanation because I don't know. But,
You could ask a question.
oh, I'm asking you. Yeah.
Oh, good. That's a question.
Mayor, do you know
Yeah.
why there's only 4 issues?
I just certainly do, because the Greater Adelaide Region of Councils has declined to not accept, declined to forward some to the
Okay.
board to be incorporated.
Well, that's good.
So what's happening is the new constitution is requiring councils to push them through GAROC or the board.
Yeah.
And those 2 bodies are using their authority to say, yes, we genuinely don't have a policy position on this item, take it to a general meeting, or no, we do have a policy position and this is contrary to it, or it's not relevant to us, or we're not going to put it up for whatever other reason. So, and then write to the constituent council with that reason. The system's working at this point. So firstly, there's less being generated. I'm not quite sure why that's the case, but there are less. But of the ones that do get into the system, they are being filtered through those other 2 bodies first. So they've got to pass that first hurdle before they get to a general meeting. And that seems to be working. It's in line with what happens in some other jurisdictions in Australia, albeit it's about half and half. Some still have motions sent directly from councils to the general meeting without any filter, but we've changed that.
Look, I think that's not a bad process to use. I know that there were sometimes 20, 30 items for debate at general meetings, and that became quite, the few I've been to became quite tiresome. I do struggle a little bit though with the concept that GAROC could block a proposal that might be contrary to a policy position of the LGA when actually there might be good reason to change that policy position. So anyway, I'm sure we can tackle that as a council if we're in that position where we need to argue that point, but I think it does sound like a reasonable process. The other thing, I'm not sure how many people looked at the agenda, but in the agenda it also talked about some of the other items that the LGA have been dealing with. One in particular I thought of interest to us and other councils is electronic voting at meetings going forward. So that we've long, in fact here, we've put up motions in the past around that, never got very far. COVID helped us with that. And it's encouraging to see the LGA picking up the policy position, which is you can attend council meetings by proxy and vote electronically should you need to going forward. For someone who travels a little bit for my work, I would find that much more useful than many meetings that I've missed out on because I've been in state and haven't been able to join in. So I think that's encouraging to see the LGA doing that. But beyond that, I support the voting suggestions in the paper for the 4 items that will be considered.
Thank
by the
you.
LGA.
Who's the seconder? Councillor Barnett, wish to speak to it?
Yes, certainly, and I agree with the support of the note once before us in the report. Yes, I think it's much better to have a bit more of this filtering process because over many years I've seen many individual council ones that have, sort of really gone off on a tangent there, and yeah, I think some might say, well, it's diluting in, the democracy or something like that. But I mean, it's a peer group. So, if you're not happy with the system, well, then there are other ways, mechanisms that, to sort of raise it through delegates and through the regions. I think from what I've heard and from other elected members in different parts of the state, that their regional groups seem to be, more vibrant or more, working well. So let's hope that keeps up. Yeah, I haven't seen it popped up again, but the having council call flutes and because all the environmental damages, but I think that's a LGA policy, because I note that the state government has refused to ban call flutes during the election. So we'll keep trying.
Any further debate this item? Councillor Groot, you need to sum up? Concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Four-foot ban is in the current reforms before Parliament to the Local Government Act. But we haven't heard the outcome of that yet. Item 10.11, the Community Service Awards 2021. Recommendations on page 287, 288. Noting Councillor Barnett's advised us she has perceived conflict of interest but is staying in the room and listen to the debate and not participate in the vote. Somebody else wish to move what's on page 287, 288? Councillor Groot, wish to speak to it?
I will, just a point of order, sorry, just from a procedural point of view. Can Councillor Barnett stay in the room and not vote? I didn't think.
CEO?
No, apparently, I think, isn't that correct, Manager Governance, that if you're in the room, you must vote?
Manager of Governance.
Through the chair, for being a perceived conflict of interest, yes, Barnett has cleared previously that she's staying in the room, not participating in the debate, not voting, which is fine. That is correct under the Act. So there's no need to.
You can stay in the room. and vote.
Correct.
Not
If Councillor Barnett was to vote, then the manner in which she specifically voted would need to be recorded in the minutes, but she's not. So
Okay.
the minutes will also reflect that she's chosen not to vote.
Yes, so we don't have this issue come up often, not because we're not all working hard on things, but because a lot of this has happened over recent years and we haven't been caught up in it. Other councils, West Torrens in particular, I know councillors had plenty of experience in this, tie themselves up in knots over it. We haven't had to worry, but that is the contemporary procedure around these matters. Okay.
Look, yes, I'll move this motion. I just reflect to the good old days. If you're in the chair, you had to vote and might just have to stand up at the right time or the wrong time not to vote. But anyway, that aside, look, I think this is a fantastic thing. I'd be interested, and apologies if we have received this, but just I presume there's a nomination statement for each individual. So it would just for interest.
It has come out by separate email.
It has? Okay, sorry, I had missed that. But notwithstanding that, I absolutely support all the names, including our colleague, my colleague to my right. So we'll support the motion.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ritt.
Move it in parts. Individual.
I'm going to take the seconder first. I'll come to you in a second.
Echo the words, support, yeah, the email as well. Thank you for that. And yeah, supporting all the nominees and all worthy recipients of the award. So recommend both 1 and 2 to you.
Thank you. Councillor Harris, wish to speak to it?
Oh, I won't have it in part. Yeah, I will. I'm going to support it without a problem, and because they're our volunteers, most of them, so I know quite a few of them by name, but I'll move over here because I'm sitting next to a councillor and her name's on the list and it comes up. So I think I feel pretty proud to be able to say that everyone around the room does things and all this, but in 20, nearly 30 years, and if you want to go back before when Christina was a young girl and I knew Blinky Bill very young, even goes back further, I think she's done a great job in helping people, and a certificate or award like this, that's not a big thing, but I think it's a very important thing that we do recognise the sister that's sitting right alongside us in the work she's done for this city, and not just this city, for women around the place and other areas. So I'm very happy, and there's other names there I feel quite proud of as well that do help, but they're not sitting here tonight. So I'm going to vote for the whole lot, but I'd really like to have a special thing and thank you, Christina, for what she's done for our community and people around.
Yeah. Any further debate? Councillor Pearce.
I'm not normally one to repeat what other people already said, but I will tonight and congratulate Christina on the award. Well,
Haven't got it yet.
well, when she does receive it, when she does receive it.
Thank you.
If the vote goes through.
That's right. That's right. Sounds like it will. Any further debate? Councillor Wayne.
I'll just echo everybody's sentiment and congratulations to co-councillor, sorry,
I'm not getting
Christina,
an award.
for being nominated. I'm very proud, and the work that she's done, like in my 2.5 years, all the groups that she's been involved in, all the community groups. She's been outstanding and a great role model. So congratulations.
Thank you. And from the chair, absolutely echo those words. I was at the dawn service before dawn, and who greeted me at the door of the RSL? Councillor Barnett, in her role as an RSL committee member, there, bright and sparky, making sure that people were checking into their COVID stuff and handing out breakfast tickets. Councillor Barnett pops up in all sorts of places doing all sorts of things. So sometimes there's a bit of tension around, well, you shouldn't get rewards because you're already a councillor and you're getting paid. The Act doesn't require you to be there before dawn at a dawn service, doesn't require you to be at a dawn service, doesn't require you to be a long-term member of the Prospect Local History Group or the local Family History Group or the Local Environment Group or many of the other things that you do, Councillor Barnett. I'm quite happy to recognise that your work in the community goes well beyond your role as required under the Act, and it's nice to see that being recognised. It's an unusual thing to see. But I think it's a perfectly natural fit in the context of all that you do. And thank you for giving me a ticket to breakfast on Sunday. It's much appreciated. I don't think there's anyone else to speak. So back to you, Councillor Group, if you wish to sum up.
Thank you. Look, there's some great names on that list, and I think as Councillor Harris mentioned, a lot of those are known to people around the table. A special acknowledgement, as everyone has, to Christina Barnett in her role as Christina Barnett. I would also like to thank you for giving me a ticket on Sunday morning, which I couldn't have otherwise got in, and probably Councillor Rick might say the same thing. But look, I'm sure this will be voted up, but it's just great to have such amazing people living in our community and being part of who we are as a City of Prospect. So congratulations to all of them, and especially to our friend around the table.
Please debate. All those in favour? Against? It is carried. I'm not sure to record that unanimously, Manager of Governance. All eligible people who said they were able to vote voted in favour. So Councillor Barnett's here. I'll leave it with you to contemplate. I assume you should only answer that question, but congratulations, Councillor Barnett, at this juncture.
I'm surprised I've been
That's always a good thing. Item 11 is general business, urgent business. Is there any urgent business? Knowing, of course, that you need a matter to get it on the table before it even gets considered. There being none, there's none. Move on. Reports for information. It is voted on block. Unless they're withdrawn, I'll withdraw item 12.3. Anybody wish to withdraw item 12.1? Mirror report? No. Or 12.2, the Eastern Waste Management Authority Board meeting minutes? No. Someone wish to move those on block? Councillor Rip? There's no debate on moving on block. We have a seconder. Councillor Harris. All those in favour? They are all voted up. Thank you. Item 12.3, I didn't want to speak for long. Just to point out that it is a lengthy report. I hope you've had a chance to look through it. The CEO and I, of course, hosted the era during the COVID year. We had great hopes for what we would do because we both wanted to do a lot more. I think we made a fair fist of it, even with the restrictions, and we saved some money because we didn't have to feed them every time. So that was pretty good. And we did it online and in person, and I think it worked actually quite well. The reason I wanted to pull that out is to urge you, if you haven't read it, to please read it thoroughly. The ERA Group does do quite a bit of work and adds to the depth of our policy around a number of areas. I have to say, though, that I remain frustrated that we haven't been able to grow our shared services portfolio through our involvement in ERA. In fact, if I was brutally honest, I'd suggest to you that we share less now than we did 10 years ago. And I think that's a great shame. I haven't quite worked out how to crack the nut. I have tried several ways. CEO has tried as well. But if you don't have an appetite by people you want to share with to share, it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to have a one-sided wedding waltz. So that's the only drawback. But there are many, many other things in there that are worthwhile, including all the environmental issues, which takes a fair bit of the back of the paper. So if there's any questions around those, happy to take them, but otherwise that's why I'll withdraw that item and take that as me speaking to it. At 12.3, is there someone who wishes to move it in its current form? Councillor Barnett wishes to speak to it.
Yes, it's always like the little sleeper thing, because when you read the report, you know, there's an amazing amount of work that is there, and some really excellent projects. You know, I can just see some that I think at Prospect we've been particularly focused on the ageing in place project and that notion of co-housing, and the certainly COVID-19, domestic violence, safe home, some of the economic development things, and the prospectus is certainly, you know, very pardon me, well done. Oh, that's all.
So did you just say anything more?
Just wait till you get the award. There you go.
That was terrible. I think you said that's all. I'm going to take it as that's all. And hope you recover. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ripp, wish to speak to it?
No.
Do you any further debate? Councillor Barnett, I'm sure you don't need to sum up your own speech. Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? This is carried unanimously.
Well, something.
Taking your own words. Council member reports and briefings. Are there any?
Order with the wrong.
Yeah, no, it's terrible.
There are no councillor member reports and briefings. We'll move on. Motions on notice, nil. Questions with notice, nil. We now move to confidential items. Item 16.1, the Village Park car parking strategic options preliminary update. Just to move into confidence, do I have someone who's happy to move that way? Councillor Troop, wish to speak to it?
Thank you.
I have a seconder. Councillor Ripp, we should speak to it. Do we have any further debate on that? That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Turn the camera off.